A struggling waitress paid a taxi fare for a stranger caught in the rain, never knowing he was a millionaire CEO who would turn her entire world upside down. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments what city you are watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. She stood in his office 10 months later, her hands trembling as she held the envelope he'd just given her. Inside wasn't just money. It was the deed to her mother's house, the one the bank had foreclosed on 3 years ago. But as tears streamed down her face, he said 5 words that shattered everything. "Now we're even. Goodbye, Alyssa." She didn't understand. She couldn't have known that the simple act of paying a $20 taxi fare had set off a chain of events that would save his life, destroy her heart, and force them both to confront the terrible price of pride. But to understand the earth-shattering weight of that moment, we have to go back to where it all began, back to a rainy Tuesday night when kindness cost $20 and changed 2 lives forever. The rain hit Seattle like it had a personal vendetta that Tuesday night. Not the gentle romantic drizzle you see in the movies. This was the kind of rain that soaked through your jacket in seconds, that turned the streets into rivers and made you question every life choice that had led you to be outside at 11:47 p.m. Alyssa Cole stood under the flickering awning of Giuseppe's Italian kitchen, watching the downpour with the kind of exhausted resignation that comes from pulling a double shift. Her feet screamed inside her worn sneakers, the kind of pain that started as a dull ache around hour 6 and evolved into a full symphony of agony by hour 14. Her apron was stained with marinara sauce and the hopes and dreams she'd left somewhere. Between Table 12's complaint about the risotto and the cook's meltdown over a broken stove, she was 28 years old, and tonight she felt about 90. "You need a ride, Alyssa?" Giuseppe himself emerged from the back, his thick Italian accent softened by 40 years in the Pacific Northwest, his weathered face creased with concern. "Can't afford it, Giuseppe." Alyssa managed a tired smile. "Bus is just 2 blocks. I'll be fine. In this, you'll catch your death." Death would probably be less exhausting than another shift tomorrow. She meant it as a joke, but it came out sounding too real, too raw. Giuseppe's expression softened even more. He pulled out his wallet, but Alyssa held up her hand. "Don't, please. You've already done enough, letting me pick up extra shifts. Your mother is the same." Alyssa cut him off gently. The same meant still in the nursing home, still fading a little more each day, still costing $400 a month that Alyssa didn't have. "I'll figure it out. I always do." It was a lie they both knew she was telling, but Giuseppe nodded anyway. Because sometimes kindness meant letting people hold on to their dignity, even when it was the only thing they had left. Alyssa pulled her thin jacket tighter and stepped into the rain. The world became water and cold, and the rhythmic slap of her sneakers against wet pavement. She kept her head down, counting the cracks in the sidewalk. Anything to keep moving forward. Anything to not think about the bills stuffed in her kitchen drawer. The envelopes she couldn't open because she already knew what they said. Past due. Final notice. Your mother's care will be discontinued if she walked faster, as if she could outrun her own thoughts. That's when she saw him. He was standing on the corner of 5th and Pine, and he looked wrong. Completely, utterly out of place. Like someone had taken a figure from a Renaissance painting and dropped him into a Seattle street at midnight. His suit was expensive even through the rain. Alyssa could tell that much. The kind of tailored perfection that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But it was soaked through, clinging to his frame, and he wasn't moving. Just standing there in the rain like a statue, staring at nothing. No umbrella, no coat, no bag. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and even from 20 feet away, Alyssa could see the way his shoulders hunched forward. Not from the cold, from something much heavier. She should have kept walking. She had exactly $47 in her checking account and a bus to catch. This man was clearly someone important, someone with the kind of money that meant he had people to solve his problems. He didn't need help from a broke waitress who could barely help herself. But Alyssa's feet stopped moving anyway. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, back from the days when her mother could still speak in full sentences. "We may not have much. May, but we always have enough to be kind." "Excuse me," Alyssa called out, her voice nearly lost in the rain. "Are you okay?" The man didn't respond at first, didn't even seem to hear her. Up close, she could see he was probably in his late 30s, with sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't so completely devoid of life. His eyes, dark brown, almost black in the rain, stared past her at something only he could see. "Sir?" Alyssa tried again, stepping closer. "Do you need help?" Finally, his gaze focused on her, and Alyssa felt something cold ripple through her chest. She'd seen that look before, in her mother's eyes, in those terrible weeks after her father died, in her own reflection, on the nights when the weight of everything became too much. This was the look of someone standing on the edge of something they couldn't come back from. His voice was rough, unused. "I don't have my phone, or my wallet. Did someone rob you?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "No, I left them, in my office. I started walking and I couldn't—" He trailed off, and Alyssa watched his jaw clench, watched him force himself back into control with visible effort. "I need to get to Bellevue. But I don't— How'd you end up all the way in downtown Seattle without your phone?" The words came out before Alyssa could stop them. His eyes met hers, and for just a second, the mask slipped. She saw grief there, and rage, and an exhaustion that matched her own. "I drove to a bridge," he said quietly, flatly. "The 5:20. I was going to—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "But I couldn't do it. So I drove to the office instead, parked, and just walked." Oh no. Alyssa's heart clenched. The 5:20 bridge. Everyone in Seattle knew what that meant. People jumped from there, not often, but enough that there were crisis hotline signs posted every 50 feet. This man, this stranger in his $1,000 suit, had gone there to die, and he'd chosen not to. But now he was stranded in the rain, miles from home, and Alyssa could see the fragile thread holding him together, could see how easily it might snap. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay, let's get you a taxi. I told you, I've got it." The man blinked at her like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. "You don't even know me." "I know you're cold and wet and far from home," Alyssa said simply. She was already pulling out her phone, already pulling up the rideshare app, even though she knew this was financially stupid. "And I know that whatever happened tonight, you chose to live through it." "That's enough!" Something shifted in the man's expression. His jaw worked silently, and Alyssa watched his hands, which had been hanging loosely at his sides, curl into fists. Not in anger, in an effort to hold himself together. "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "Why what? Why would you help me? You don't know anything about me." You could be a lot of things," Alyssa interrupted, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "But right now, you're someone who needs help, and I can give it. So let me." The app showed a driver 3 minutes away. Alyssa confirmed the ride to an address in Bellevue. The man quietly provided some street in a neighborhood where houses probably had guest houses bigger than her apartment. The fare made her stomach drop. $32 with the late-night surge pricing. $32 she absolutely, completely, definitely could not afford. She confirmed it anyway. They stood in silence while they waited, the rain continuing its relentless assault. Alyssa snuck glances at the stranger beside her. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, The way his expensive clothes hung on a frame that looked like it had lost weight recently. Lost it the way people did when they stopped remembering to eat. "What's your name?" she asked, just to fill the terrible silence. He hesitated. For a long moment, Alyssa thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Adrian." "I'm Alyssa. Alyssa." He repeated her name like he was testing how it felt. Thank you, Alyssa. I'll pay you back. I promise. I just need your number. Or, don't worry about it. It's $30. 32, Alyssa corrected with a small smile. And seriously, don't worry about it. Just get home safe. Get warm. And tomorrow, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Tomorrow maybe call someone, a friend, a therapist, someone. Adrian's expression did something complicated. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally just nodded. The black sedan pulled up, splashing water onto the sidewalk. Alyssa opened the door for him. "Thank you," Adrian said again, and his voice cracked on the words. You didn't have to." "Yeah, I did," Alyssa said softly. "We all need someone sometimes, even strangers." He slid into the back seat and Alyssa shut the door. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw him turn to look at her one last time. There was something in his eyes, a question, maybe, or a promise. She couldn't quite tell. Then the car pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the rain and the night. Alyssa stood there for a long moment, watching the empty street. Her phone buzzed with the payment confirmation, $32 gone. Her account balance now read $15.33. She had officially done something incredibly, astronomically stupid. But as she finally turned toward the bus stop, hunching against the rain, Alyssa found she didn't regret it. Couldn't regret it, because somewhere in Bellevue, a man named Adrian was going home instead of going into the water. And maybe he'd wake up tomorrow and choose to live through another day. That had to be worth $32. It had to be. What Alyssa didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known as she climbed onto the nearly empty bus and collapsed into a seat. Exhausted down to her bones, was that the man she'd just helped wasn't just any stranger. Adrian Pierce was the CEO of Apex Dynamics, a tech company worth $3.7 billion. He'd been featured in Forbes. TechCrunch had called him the quiet genius reshaping cloud infrastructure. He had homes in 3 countries, a garage full of cars he never drove, and more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. And 6 hours ago, he'd held a gun in his hands and seriously considered ending it all. But he hadn't. And now, as his taxi merged onto the 520 bridge, the same bridge he'd stood on earlier, staring at the dark water below, Adrian found himself thinking about a waitress with kind eyes and worn sneakers, about the way she'd looked at him like he mattered, even though she had no idea who he was, about how she'd given him $32 she clearly couldn't afford, expecting nothing in return. The taxi pulled up to his mansion in Medina, and Adrian sat there for a moment, staring at the house. It was beautiful. Empty. Everything inside it was beautiful and empty, just like his life. But Alyssa's words echoed in his head. Tomorrow. Maybe call someone. Tomorrow. He'd made it to tomorrow. As Adrian climbed out of the taxi, paid the driver with the emergency cash he kept in his office safe, picked up during a brief stop the driver had graciously allowed, he made himself a promise. He would find Alyssa. He would repay her. Not just the $32, but everything. He would make sure she never had to worry about money again. It was the least he could do for the stranger who'd saved his life. He just had no idea that his gratitude would become an obsession, that his desire to repay a debt would spiral into something neither of them could control, that the simple act of kindness on a rainy Seattle street would lead them both to the edge of ruin and back again. But that's the thing about kindness, isn't it? It's never really simple. It opens doors that can't be closed. It creates connections that can't be severed. It changes the course of lives in ways no one can predict. And on that Tuesday night in Seattle, as Alyssa rode the bus home and Adrian stood in his empty mansion, neither of them knew that their story was only just beginning. The rain continued to fall, and somewhere in the city, the invisible threads of fate pulled tighter, weaving two lives together in ways that would prove both beautiful and devastating. The question was, would either of them survive what came next? Alyssa woke up to $15 in her checking account and a headache that felt like someone was using her skull as a drum set. The alarm on her phone screamed at 6:00 a.m., and for a long moment, she just lay there in her studio apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a dragon, or maybe a map of Italy. She'd never quite decided. The apartment was small, criminally small, the kind of place where you could touch the refrigerator from your bed if you really stretched. But it was hers, or at least it would be for another 2 weeks, assuming she could scrape together rent. Her phone buzzed again. Not the alarm this time. A text from the nursing home. Ms. Cole, this is a reminder that payment for your mother's care is now 12 days overdue. Please contact our billing department at your earliest convenience. Alyssa's stomach twisted into a knot. Earliest convenience, as if she was just forgetting to pay, like it had slipped her mind, as if she wasn't lying awake every night trying to figure out how to conjure $6,400 out of thin air. She dragged herself out of bed, her body protesting every movement. The double shift at Giuseppe's had left her with aching feet and a back that felt like it belonged to someone 3 times her age. But there was no time to rest. She had the morning shift at the diner on Capitol Hill, then an afternoon shift back at Giuseppe's. Then, if she was lucky, maybe 3 hours of sleep before doing it all over again. This was her life now. Had been for 3 years, ever since her mother's Alzheimer's had gotten bad enough that Alyssa couldn't care for her alone anymore. She thought about the man from last night, Adrian. Wondered if he'd made it home okay. Wondered if he'd actually called someone like she'd suggested. Wondered if he was still alive. That last thought hit her harder than she expected. She'd been so exhausted when she got home that she'd collapsed into bed without really processing what had happened. But now, in the cold light of morning, the weight of it settled over her. She'd met a man who'd been planning to kill himself, and she'd sent him home in a taxi and hoped for the best. Was that enough? Should she have done more? Alyssa shook her head, forcing the thoughts away. She couldn't afford to spiral. Couldn't afford to take on someone else's pain when she was barely keeping her own head above water. She'd done what she could. That had to be enough. It had to be. She got dressed in her diner uniform, a mint green dress that had seen better days, and an apron that never quite came clean, no matter how many times she washed it. Pulled her dark hair into a ponytail, splashed water on her face, and called it makeup. The woman in the mirror looked tired, looked worn down, looked like she was 38 instead of 28. Alyssa looked away. Across the city, in a bedroom bigger than Alyssa's entire apartment, Adrian Pierce hadn't slept at all. He'd stood in the shower for 40 minutes, letting the hot water beat against his skin until it ran cold. He'd changed into dry clothes, soft cotton pants, and a t-shirt that probably cost more than Alyssa's monthly grocery budget. He'd walked through his house, room by room, looking at all the beautiful things he owned, and feeling absolutely nothing. Then he'd sat down in his home office and started searching. Finding her was harder than he'd expected. He knew her first name, Alyssa. He knew she worked at an Italian restaurant somewhere in downtown Seattle. He knew she had kind eyes and worn sneakers and the kind of selfless generosity that seemed to exist only in fairy tales. But Seattle had dozens of Italian restaurants, and without a last name, without any real information, he was searching blind. Adrian opened his laptop, his fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. He'd built a multi-billion-dollar company on his ability to find patterns, to solve problems, to track down information that others couldn't. He could find one waitress in a city of 750,000 people. He had to. The memory of last night sat in his chest, like a stone. The bridge, the rain, the absolute certainty that he couldn't do this anymore, couldn't wake up one more day in this beautiful, empty life, couldn't face another board meeting, another investor call, another interview where he pretended to care about quarterly earnings and market share. His wife had left him 14 months ago, just walked out of their marriage with barely an explanation, leaving behind only a note that said, "I can't love a ghost, Adrian." And that's all you've been for years. He'd thrown himself into work after that, pushed harder, worked longer, built his company into an empire. And it had meant nothing, absolutely nothing. He'd stood at the top of the mountain and realized there was nothing there but thin air and crushing loneliness. So last night, he'd driven to the bridge and he'd stood there in the rain, hands on the railing, looking at the dark water 40 feet below. It would be easy, so easy. Just climb over, let go, and finally stop feeling this endless, grinding pain. But he couldn't do it, couldn't make himself take that final step. So he'd walked, miles and miles through the rain, until he was soaked and shivering and so far from his car that going back seemed impossible. And then Alyssa had appeared, a stranger with barely any money who'd given him exactly what she couldn't afford, who'd looked at him, really looked at him, and seen someone worth saving. Adrian needed to find her, needed to repay her, needed to understand why someone would do that, would sacrifice for a person they'd never see again. He started with Google searches. Giuseppe's Italian Kitchen Seattle turned up 5 results. He called each one as soon as 9:01 a.m. hit, using a burner phone he kept for situations that required anonymity. The first 3 had never heard of a waitress named Alyssa. The 4th, Giuseppe's on Pine Street. The man who answered said, "Alyssa? Yeah, she works here. But she's not in today. She's got the morning off." Adrian's heart kicked against his ribs. "Does she work anywhere else? I need to. I owe her money." "For something." There was a long pause. Then, "Who is this?" "A friend. She helped me out last night, and I want to pay her back." Another pause. Giuseppe's voice turned cautious. "Alyssa's a good girl, works too hard. If you're looking to cause trouble, I'm not, I promise. I just want to thank her properly." Giuseppe seemed to consider this. Finally, "She works mornings at Betty's Diner on Capitol Hill sometimes. But whoever you are, Alyssa, don't need trouble. She's got enough problems already." "I'm not trouble," Adrian said quietly. "I'm just grateful." He ended the call and immediately pulled up Betty's Diner, looked at the address. 40 minutes from his house in current traffic. Adrian grabbed his keys. Betty's Diner was the kind of place that hadn't changed since 1987 and had no intention of starting now. Red vinyl booths with duct tape repairs, a jukebox in the corner that only played if you hit it just right, coffee that tasted like it had been brewed with equal parts water and resentment. Alyssa loved it. Well, loved was a strong word. She tolerated it. And Betty, the owner, a 72-year-old woman with a beehive, hairdo, and a cigarette always dangling from her lips, despite the no smoking laws, paid cash under the table. When Alyssa needed it most, Table 6 is asking for more coffee, Betty barked from behind the counter. And Table 2 wants to know if we have almond milk. "Do we have almond milk?" Alyssa called back. "Do I look like a bougie coffee shop?" "I'll tell them no." Alyssa grabbed the coffee pot and made her rounds, smiling at customers even though her feet were already screaming, and it was only 8:30 in the morning. The diner was half full, the usual mix of construction workers, night shift nurses, and people who just didn't have anywhere better to be. She was refilling Table 6's coffee when the door Chimed, Alyssa glanced up out of habit and nearly dropped the pot. Adrian stood in the doorway. He looked different in the daylight. Still handsome, that hadn't changed, but less like a ghost and more like an actual person. He'd changed clothes, obviously, trading the soaked suit for dark jeans and a simple black sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. His dark hair was still damp, like he'd showered recently, and those eyes, those dark, intense eyes locked onto her immediately. Recognition flashed across his face. Relief. Something else Alyssa couldn't quite name. He walked toward her, and Alyssa's brain seemed to short-circuit. What was he doing here? How did he find her? And why did her heart suddenly feel like it was trying to escape her chest? "Alyssa," he said when he reached her, and his voice was warm. Alive in a way it hadn't been last night. "Adrian." She managed to keep her voice steady. "Hi, what are you… How did you… I wanted to find you, to thank you, and to pay you back." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. $32, right? He held out two 20s. Alyssa stared at the money like it was a snake. "I told you not to worry about it." "And I'm worrying about it anyway." A small smile tugged at his lips. The first smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face entirely, softening those sharp features into something almost boyish. "Please, let me do this. Sweetie, you gonna take the man's money, or you gonna just stare at it?" Betty called from across the diner, not even trying to be subtle. Alyssa's cheeks flushed. Several customers were watching now, clearly entertained by the drama unfolding in their Tuesday morning breakfast routine. "Fine," Alyssa said quietly, taking the money. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a jolt of something electric shoot up her arm. She pulled back quickly, shoving the bills into her apron pocket. "Thank you. But you really didn't have to come all the way here." "I wanted to." Adrian paused, and something vulnerable crossed his face. "I wanted to make sure you knew that what you did last night, it mattered. More than you know." Alyssa felt her throat tighten. Are you okay?" "I am now." He held her gaze, and Alyssa saw something in his eyes that made her chest ache. Gratitude, yes, but also a kind of desperate hope, like he'd found something precious and was terrified of losing it. "Thanks to you." "I just paid for a taxi." "You did more than that, and you know it." The moment stretched between them, heavy with words neither of them knew how to say. Alyssa was acutely aware of the other customers watching, of Betty pretending not to eavesdrop while absolutely eavesdropping, of the fact that she was still holding a coffee pot and wearing a stained apron. And this man, this beautiful, broken stranger was looking at her like she'd hung the moon. "Can I buy you coffee?" Adrian asked suddenly. "When you're off shift?" "Just to talk. I'd really like to. I'd like to get to know the person who saved my life." "I didn't save your life." "You did, though." His voice was quiet, but firm. "You absolutely did." Alyssa should have said no. Every practical bone in her body was screaming at her to say no. She didn't have time for coffee. She had another shift at Giuseppe's in 3 hours. She had bills to pay, and a mother to take care of, and a life that was barely held together with duct tape and determination. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "I get off at noon." Adrian's smile, his real smile, the one that reached his eyes, nearly knocked her over. "Noon," he repeated. "I'll be here." He turned to leave, then stopped. Turned back. "Alyssa? Thank you. For everything." Then he was gone, the door chiming behind him, leaving Alyssa standing in the middle of Betty's diner with a coffee pot in one hand and $40 in her pocket, and absolutely no idea what had just happened. "Well," Betty said, appearing at her elbow with a lit cigarette and a knowing smirk. "That was interesting." "Don't," Alyssa warned. "Don't what?" "I didn't say nothing." "You're about to." "All I'm saying is, That boy looked at you like you were the first good thing he'd seen in a decade. Betty took a drag of her cigarette. And unless my eyes are deceiving me, which they ain't, that sweater he was wearing costs about what I make in a month. So either you've made a very rich friend, or you're about to have a very complicated life. It's not like that, Alyssa protested. But even she didn't believe herself. Betty just laughed a raspy, cigarette-stained sound. Sure it's not, honey. Sure it's not. Alyssa went back to work, but her mind was miles away. She kept glancing at the clock, watching the minutes crawl by, kept replaying the way Adrian had looked at her, the way he'd said, "You saved my life," like he meant it. She told herself this was just about repaying a debt. He felt guilty, that's all. He wanted to ease his conscience with a cup of coffee and a proper thank you. Then he'd go back to his life, and she'd go back to hers. And that would be the end of it. But deep down, in a place Alyssa didn't want to examine too closely, she knew that wasn't true. Something had started between them on that rainy street. Something neither of them had asked for, and neither of them knew how to handle. And when noon finally rolled around, and Adrian walked back through that door, right on time, with a smile that made Alyssa's heart do dangerous things in her chest, she realized that her life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. Betty was right, as always. This was going to change everything. The question was, would it change things for better or for worse? Alyssa grabbed her purse, untied her apron, and walked toward Adrian, toward this strange, magnetic pull she didn't understand and couldn't resist. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered a warning she didn't want to hear. Be careful. Men like him don't stay in worlds like yours. And when they leave, they take pieces of you with them. But Alyssa silenced that voice, pushed it down deep, because for the first time in 3 years, something good was happening. Something unexpected and wonderful and entirely her own. She wasn't going to ruin it by being afraid. Not yet. Anyway, they ended up at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from Betty's diner. The kind of place with mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, and a barista with enough piercings to set off a metal detector. Adrian ordered a black coffee. Alyssa ordered a latte, then immediately felt self-conscious about it when she saw the price. $5.75 for coffee. That was almost half of what she'd had in her account this morning. I'm paying, Adrian said quickly, like he could read her mind. He handed the barista a 20 before Alyssa could protest. Keep the change. The barista's eyes widened. Seriously? Seriously? They found a corner table by the window, away from the handful of other customers tapping away on laptops. Alyssa wrapped her hands around her latte, grateful for the warmth, and tried not to stare at the man sitting across from her. In the soft afternoon light filtering through the window, Adrian looked almost normal, almost like someone she might actually know, instead of a stranger who'd materialized out of the rain with a story that felt too heavy to be real. But there was still something about him that set him apart. The way he held himself, maybe that careful control, like he was constantly managing his own presence. Or the expensive watch on his wrist that he kept unconsciously touching. Or the fact that his casual clothes probably cost more than her monthly rent. So, Adrian said, wrapping his hands around his own cup. Tell me about yourself. Alyssa laughed a sharp, surprised sound. That's a terrible opening line, is it? He looked genuinely confused. It's what people say when they can't think of anything else to say. It's like asking, how are you? Nobody actually wants a real answer. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Interest, maybe. Or appreciation. I want a real answer. Do you, though? I tracked you down, didn't I? Drove 40 minutes to find the diner where you work. I think that qualifies as genuine interest. Alyssa took a sip of her latte, buying time. What was she supposed to say? Hi, I'm Alyssa Cole, professional disaster. I work 3 jobs to pay for my mother's nursing home care. I'm 2 weeks from getting evicted. And last night, I gave away money I definitely couldn't afford because, apparently, I have terrible survival instincts. There's not much to tell, she said finally. I'm 28. I work at Giuseppe's and Betty's, sometimes other places when I need extra cash. I live in a studio apartment in Fremont that's approximately the size of your bathroom, probably. What about family? The question hit a nerve Alyssa hadn't prepared for. She looked down at her coffee. My mom. She's in a nursing home. Alzheimer's. Advanced stage. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's just life, I guess. Alyssa forced herself to look up, to meet his eyes. What about you? Who is Adrian when he's not standing in the rain at midnight? For a long moment, Adrian didn't answer. He stared into his coffee like it might hold the secrets of the universe. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. That's a concerning answer from someone who was on a bridge last night. Adrian flinched. You're direct. Should I not be? No, I appreciate it, actually. Most people dance around things. Pretend they don't notice when someone's falling apart. He took a sip of his coffee, and Alyssa watched his jaw tighten. I'm a CEO, tech company. We do cloud infrastructure and data security. It's incredibly boring unless you're a computer engineer. A CEO, Alyssa repeated. That explained the expensive clothes, the watch, the way he'd tipped the barista more than some people made in an hour. So you're successful. By most definitions, yes. But not by yours. Adrian's eyes snapped up to meet hers, something like surprise flickering across his face. How did you... Because successful people don't usually end up on bridges at midnight, Alyssa said gently. And they definitely don't look the way you looked last night. Like success was the loneliest thing in the world. The silence that followed was heavy. Adrian's hands tightened around his coffee cup, and for a moment, Alyssa thought she'd pushed too hard, crossed a line she had no right to cross. Then Adrian started talking. My wife left me 14 months ago, he said, the words spilling out like he'd been holding them back for too long. Just left. No warning, no fight, no chance to fix whatever I'd broken. She left a note that said I was a ghost, that she couldn't love someone who wasn't really there. Alyssa didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. She just listened. The thing is, she was right. I had been a ghost. I'd spent years building my company, chasing success, working 16-hour days because it was easier than going home and admitting that I didn't know how to be a husband, how to be a person. Adrian's voice cracked slightly. After she left, I worked even harder. Told myself that if I could just make the company successful enough, big enough, important enough, then it would all mean something. I would mean something. And? Alyssa asked softly. And last month, Forbes put me on their cover, called me one of the most influential tech leaders under 40. I stood in my office, holding that magazine, and felt absolutely nothing. Just empty. Like I'd spent my entire life climbing a mountain, and when I got to the top, there was nothing there. He looked up at Alyssa, and she saw tears threatening at the corners of his eyes, saw him fighting to hold them back. So last night, I went to the bridge, because I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't wake up one more day in that beautiful empty house. Couldn't face another meeting where I pretended to care about profit margins and stock prices. Couldn't keep being this successful, impressive shell of a person who didn't even remember what it felt like to be human. A tear escaped, tracking down his cheek. Adrian wiped it away angrily, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't jump. So I drove to my office, left my phone and wallet, and just walked. Walked until I was so far from everything that going back seemed impossible. And then you found me. His voice dropped to a whisper. You looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth saving. And I hadn't felt that in so long, Alyssa. So goddamn long! Alyssa's throat was tight. Her own eyes were stinging with unshed tears. She reached across the table without thinking, covering his hand with hers. You do matter, she said fiercely. I don't care how empty you feel, or how lost you are, you matter. Your life matters. Adrian stared at their joined hands like he didn't quite believe they were real. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know nothing. You don't know the mistakes I've made, the people I've hurt. I know you came back from that bridge, Alyssa interrupted. I know you chose to live. And I know that right now, in this moment, you're here. You're real. You're trying. That's enough, Adrian's composure finally cracked. He turned his hand over, gripping Alyssa's like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. A sob escaped him, raw and broken, and full of all the pain he'd been carrying alone. And Alyssa held on while this stranger, this CEO, this ghost, this broken man, fell apart in a coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. She didn't let go, didn't look away, didn't tell him to pull himself together or that everything would be okay. She just held on. Around them, the coffee shop continued its normal rhythm. The barista made drinks. Laptops clicked. Soft indie music played through the speakers. And in their corner by the window, two people who'd been strangers 24 hours ago shared a moment of devastating intimacy. Finally, Adrian pulled himself back together. He wiped his eyes, took a shaky breath, and managed a watery smile. Sorry, that was embarrassing. Don't apologize for being human. I'm supposed to be. I'm a CEO. I run a billion-dollar company. You don't what? Feel things? Fall apart? Need help? Alyssa squeezed his hand once more before letting go. Adrian, whoever told you that success means never breaking down, lied to you. We all break sometimes. The only difference is whether we have someone to help pick up the pieces. Adrian looked at her with something like wonder. How are you this wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired. And when you're tired enough, you stop bothering with the bullshit and just say what's true. Alyssa took a sip of her now lukewarm latte. Besides, you should hear me at 3 a.m. when I'm stress-eating cereal and crying over my bank statements. Not so wise then. A laugh escaped Adrian, surprised and genuine. You stress-eat cereal? Cinnamon Toast Crunch, straight from the box. It's a whole thing. That's... Adrian shook his head, smiling. That's oddly comforting to know. They sat in silence for a moment, but it was different now. Comfortable. Like they'd crossed some invisible threshold and ended up on the other side as something more than strangers. Can I ask you something? Adrian said finally. Sure. Why did you help me last night? And don't say it's just who you are, because I know plenty of people who would have walked right past. Alyssa considered the question. Really considered it. My dad died when I was 15. Heart attack. Just gone like that. And for weeks afterward, I kept thinking about all the small moments that had led to that specific minute. If he'd left work 5 minutes earlier, or later. If he'd stopped for coffee. If someone had been there, noticed something was wrong. She trailed off, lost in the memory, then pulled herself back. The point is, I learned that sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest consequences. Sometimes paying attention, being present, choosing kindness, it matters more than we can possibly know. So when I saw you last night, standing in the rain looking like the world had ended, I couldn't walk past. Couldn't be one more person who didn't notice, didn't care. Even if all I could do was pay for a taxi. Adrian's expression was unreadable. $32 you couldn't afford. How did you? Giuseppe told me you work too hard. The way you looked at the fare on your phone last night. The fact that you're working 3 jobs. Adrian leaned forward. Alyssa, you gave away money you desperately needed to help a complete stranger. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. But you're struggling. You said your mom's in a nursing home. Those places cost a fortune. You're barely keeping your head above water. And you gave me $32. Alyssa felt defensive anger rise in her chest. So what? I should have let you stand there in the rain because I'm broke? That's not how kindness works, Adrian. You don't only help people when it's convenient. I'm not criticizing you. I'm in awe of you. Adrian's voice was thick with emotion. You have every reason to be bitter, to be selfish, to look out for yourself first. But you don't. You see someone in pain and you help, even when it costs you. That's extraordinary. Alyssa looked away, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. It's really not. It's just being a decent person. Most people aren't decent. Not when it matters. Not when it costs them something. Adrian paused. Let me help you. What? Your mom's nursing home care, the bills you can't pay. Let me help. Alyssa's stomach dropped. No, absolutely not. Why not? Because I don't need your charity, Adrian. I'm not some project for you to fix so you can feel better about yourself. That's not what this is, isn't it? Alyssa's voice was sharper than she intended. Successful CEO finds struggling waitress, swoops in with his money, saves the day. That's a great story. Makes you feel like a hero. But I'm not a story, Adrian. I'm a person. And I've been taking care of myself and my mother for 3 years. I don't need to be rescued. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Adrian's face fell, and Alyssa immediately felt guilty. But she couldn't take it back. Couldn't let him think she was just another problem he could solve with his checkbook. You're right, Adrian said quietly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help. Wanted to do something. You already did. You paid me back. That's enough, is it? Alyssa stood up, grabbing her purse. I need to go. I have another shift at Giuseppe's in an hour. Alyssa, wait. Thank you for the coffee, Adrian. And I'm glad you're okay. I really am. But I think we should probably just leave this here. You go back to your life, I'll go back to mine. Clean break. I don't want a clean break. The words stopped Alyssa in her tracks. She turned back to look at him, and the expression on his face made her chest ache. I don't want to go back to my life, Adrian said, standing up. My life is empty. It's meaningless. But last night, and today, sitting here with you, it's the first time I've felt alive in over a year. Please don't take that away. Adrian, I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm not trying to fix you or make you a project. I want to know you. Want to be around someone who's real and honest and kind. Is that so wrong? Alyssa's defenses wavered. She could see the desperation in his eyes, the fear that she was about to walk away and take the only good thing he'd found with her. And God help her. She didn't want to walk away either. One coffee turned into quite the conversation, she said finally. A weak attempt at lightening the mood. I'm a good conversationalist when I'm having a breakdown. That surprised a laugh out of Alyssa. Apparently. So you're not leaving? I still have to get to Giuseppe's. Can I see you again? Not to help you or fix anything. Just to talk? Alyssa knew she should say no. Knew this was dangerous territory getting close to someone like Adrian, someone from a completely different world, someone who was still clearly broken and searching for meaning in all the wrong places. But when she looked at him, she didn't see a CEO or a millionaire or a project. She saw someone who was lonely, someone who was trying, someone who made her feel less alone in her own struggles. Yeah, she heard herself say. Yeah, okay. The smile that spread across Adrian's face was like watching the sun come out from behind clouds. Tomorrow? He asked hopefully. I work until 8. I'll wait. Adrian, I'll wait, he repeated firmly. I've got nothing but time and nowhere I'd rather be. Alyssa shook her head, but she was smiling. You're kind of intense, you know that? I've been told. And a little bit crazy. That too. They stood there for a moment, grinning at each other like idiots. And Alyssa realized, with a jolt of recognition, that this feeling in her chest, this warm, fluttery, terrifying feeling was hope. She hadn't felt hope in 3 years. I really do have to go, she said, but she made no move toward the door. I know. Tomorrow. Then, tomorrow. Alyssa finally forced herself to leave, walking out of the coffee shop and into the afternoon sun. She could feel Adrian watching her through the window, could feel the weight of whatever was building between them, And as she walked toward the bus stop, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for today. For listening. For being real. I know you said I already helped enough, but you saved my life twice now. Once with a taxi, and once by making me remember what it feels like to connect with another human being. Adrian Alyssa stared at the message, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. She typed back, "Stop being so dramatic. It was just coffee." His response came immediately. It was never just coffee. And deep down, Alyssa knew he was right. This thing between them, whatever it was, had stopped being simple the moment she'd decided to help a stranger in the rain. Had stopped being safe the moment she'd sat down across from him and let him fall apart. She was standing at the edge of something. Something that could be wonderful or devastating or possibly both. But for the first time in 3 years, Alyssa Cole was willing to take the risk, even if it scared her, even if it was foolish, even if it all came crashing down, because hope real, genuine hope, was worth almost anything, even if it came from the most unlikely source imaginable. Over the next 3 weeks, Alyssa's carefully controlled life began to shift in ways she couldn't have predicted. It started small. Adrian waiting outside Giuseppe's when her shift ended. 2 cups of coffee in hand, 1 black for him, 1 latte for her. They'd walk to a nearby park and sit on a bench, talking until the streetlights flickered on, and Alyssa realized she'd lost track of time completely. He told her about his company, about the pressure of running a business that employed 3,000 people. About board meetings where he felt like he was playing a character instead of being himself. About the ex-wife who'd remarried 6 months ago, married a high school teacher named David who coached soccer on weekends and apparently knew how to be present in ways Adrian never had. "I don't even blame her," Adrian had said one night, staring at the coffee cup in his hands. "I was a terrible husband, emotionally absent, married to my work. She deserved better." Alyssa told him about her mother, about how Margaret Cole had been a force of nature who'd worked 3 jobs to put Alyssa through college, who'd never missed a parent-teacher conference, who'd made the best grilled cheese sandwiches in Seattle, about how Alzheimer's had stolen her piece by piece, until the woman in the nursing home barely remembered her own daughter's name. "Some days she thinks I'm her sister," Alyssa had whispered, tears streaming down her face. "And some days she looks at me with such fear, like I'm a stranger trying to hurt her. Those days are the worst." Adrian had pulled her into a hug without asking, and Alyssa had let herself fall apart in his arms, let herself be held by someone who understood what it meant to lose the people you loved, even when they were still breathing. The friendship, if that's what it was, deepened with alarming speed. They texted constantly. Adrian would send her funny articles in the middle of the night when she couldn't sleep. Alyssa would send him pictures of the ridiculous things customers at the diner said they wanted. "Customer just asked for eggs. Benedict, but make it vegan and with no eggs. I don't even know where to start with that. Tell them you'll bring them a plate of hollandaise sauce and call it a day. You're terrible. You're smiling, though." She was. God help her, she was. But it wasn't just friendship. Alyssa knew that, even if she didn't want to admit it. There was something else building between them, something electric and dangerous, and completely inappropriate given their circumstances. The way Adrian looked at her sometimes, like she was the only real thing in his manufactured world. The way her heart would skip when she saw him waiting outside the restaurant. The way they'd gotten caught in the rain last Tuesday and ended up laughing like children, soaked to the bone. And for one crystalline moment, Alyssa had thought he was going to kiss her. He hadn't. But the almost kiss hung between them now, a question neither of them knew how to answer. "You're playing with fire," Betty warned her one morning, watching Alyssa check her phone for the 15th time during her shift. "Rich men don't stick around, honey. They get bored, they move on, and they leave broken hearts in their wake." "It's not like that," Alyssa protested. Sure it's not. That's why you light up like a Christmas tree every time your phone buzzes. Alyssa couldn't argue with that. Giuseppe was slightly more supportive, but still cautious. This Adrian, he treats you good? He does. He knows you're not some toy, yes? Not something to play with when he's feeling sad. I think so. I hope so. Giuseppe had studied her face for a long moment, then sighed. You're falling for him? It wasn't a question. Alyssa didn't bother denying it. 3 weeks and 2 days after the coffee shop confession, Adrian did something that changed everything. Alyssa was at work the evening shift at Giuseppe's when her phone rang. The nursing home. Her stomach immediately clenched. They never called unless something was wrong. Ms. Cole? This is Sandra from Evergreen Care Facility. I'm calling about your mother's account. Here it was. The call Alyssa had been dreading. They were kicking her mother out. Couldn't blame them, she was now 17 days late on payment. And they'd been more than patient. I know I'm behind, Alyssa said quickly, her voice shaking. I'm working on it. I just need another week, maybe 2. Actually, Ms. Cole, I'm calling to inform you that your mother's account has been paid in full. Alyssa's brain short-circuited. What? Someone paid the outstanding balance this morning. And not just the balance they've prepaid for the next 6 months of care. The world tilted sideways. Alyssa grabbed the counter to steady herself. That's not possible. That's almost $40,000. $38,400 to be exact. The payment came through about an hour ago. I just wanted to confirm that this was authorized, given the amount. Who? Alyssa's voice came out as a whisper. Who paid it? The payment came from Apex Dynamics. Is that a company you're affiliated with? Apex Dynamics. Adrian's company. Adrian had paid for her mother's care. Ms. Cole, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. Thank you for calling. Alyssa ended the call with shaking hands. For a long moment, she just stood there, phone clutched to her chest, trying to process what had just happened. $38,000. He'd paid $38,000 without asking her, without telling her, without giving her any choice in the matter. The initial shock gave way to something else, something hot and furious that rose in her chest like a tidal wave. She'd told him, explicitly told him that she didn't want his charity, that she wasn't a project for him to fix, and he'd done it anyway. Alyssa? Giuseppe appeared at her side, concern creasing his weathered face. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to go. Alyssa was already untying her apron. I'm sorry, Giuseppe. I know we're in the middle of dinner rush, but I need to go right now. What happened? I'll explain later. I have to go. She grabbed her purse and was out the door before Giuseppe could protest. Her phone already pulled up to Adrian's contact. She called him. It went to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail again, so she texted, We need to talk. Now. Where are you? The response came 30 seconds later. Home. Is everything okay? What's your address? He sent it. Some street in Medina that Alyssa had to Google to find. Of course he lived in Medina where Bill Gates had a house, where the median home price was probably more than Alyssa would make in 10 lifetimes. She didn't care. She called an Uber, something she never did because it was too expensive, and gave the driver the address. The 40-minute ride cost her $38. The irony wasn't lost on her. Adrian's house was exactly what Alyssa had expected, and somehow still shocking to see in person. It wasn't just a house, it was an estate. Modern architecture, all glass and steel and clean lines. Perfectly manicured lawn. A view of Lake Washington that probably cost more than the building itself. Alyssa stood at the front door, her anger building with every passing second, and rang the bell. Adrian answered almost immediately, like he'd been waiting by the door. He was in casual clothes, sweatpants, and a t-shirt, and his hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked surprised to see her, and also concerned. Alyssa, You paid for my mother's care. Her voice was cold. controlled. $38,000. Understanding dawned on his face, followed quickly by something defensive. Yes, I did. After I explicitly told you I didn't want your help. Alyssa. After I told you I wasn't a project. That I didn't need to be rescued. She was shaking now, her whole body trembling with fury. You went behind my back and did exactly what I asked you not to do. Your mother was going to be kicked out. Adrian's voice rose to match hers. You were 17 days late on payment. They were going to discharge her. And you know what happens to Alzheimer's patients when they get discharged? They get sent to state facilities where they're lucky to get basic care. I wasn't going to let that happen. That wasn't your decision to make. Someone had to make it. You're drowning, Alyssa. You're working yourself to death trying to keep your head above water, and you're still sinking. I had the ability to help, so I helped. With money I didn't ask for. Money I can never pay back. Alyssa's voice cracked. Don't you understand what you've done? I'm in debt to you now. I owe you almost $40,000. You don't owe me anything? Yes, I do. That's how debt works, Adrian. That's how the world works for people like me. We can't just throw money at problems and make them disappear. Every dollar has to be accounted for. Every expense has consequences. Adrian stepped closer, his jaw tight. I don't want you to pay me back. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to help someone who's been killing herself to take care of her mother. But I didn't ask for your help. And now I'm... Alyssa's anger suddenly collapsed into something raw, something that hurt worse than fury. I'm beholden to you. Don't you see that? You've created this massive imbalance between us. How am I supposed to be your friend when I owe you the equivalent of a year's salary? You're not beholden to me. The money is a gift. It's not a gift. Gifts are flowers and coffee and books. You don't gift someone $40,000, Adrian. That's not how this works. They stared at each other, both breathing hard. The space between them charged with emotion neither of them knew how to handle. I'm sorry, Adrian said finally, his voice dropping. I should have asked you first. Should have talked to you. But Alyssa, I watched you work 3 shifts in 2 days last week. I saw you fall asleep on the bus because you were so exhausted. And I knew that you were about to lose your mother's care because you couldn't keep up. How was I supposed to just stand by and watch that happen? You were supposed to respect my choices. Tears were streaming down Alyssa's face now. You were supposed to let me handle my own life, even if that meant watching me struggle. That's what caring about someone means, Adrian. You don't get to swoop in and fix everything just because you can afford to. I can't do that. Adrian's voice was fierce, desperate. I can't watch you suffer when I have the ability to stop it. I can't be that person. Then maybe we can't be friends. The words landed like a physical blow. Alyssa watched Adrian's face crumple. Watched him absorb the impact of what she'd just said. You don't mean that, he whispered. I do. Because this, she gestured between them. This only works if we're equals. If we're 2 people who respect each other's boundaries and choices. But you've made it clear that you see me as someone who needs saving. And I can't be that person for you. That's not how I see you, isn't it? Be honest, Adrian. When you look at me, don't you see someone broken? Someone who needs fixing? The silence that followed was damning. I see someone strong, Adrian said finally. Someone who's been dealt a terrible hand and is doing her best to survive it. And yes, I want to help you. Is that so wrong? Is it wrong to care about someone enough to use the resources you have to make their life easier? It is when they've asked you not to. So what, I was supposed to let your mother get discharged? Let you work yourself into the ground? Let you... Yes. Alyssa's voice echoed in the cavernous entryway. Yes? You were supposed to let me make my own choices and live with the consequences. That's what adults do, Adrian. That's what friends do. They support each other. They offer help. But they don't make unilateral decisions about other people's lives. Adrian's expression hardened. Fine. You want me to take the money back? I'll take it back. Your mother can get discharged, you can go back to drowning in debt and exhaustion, and I'll go back to being the emotionally distant CEO who doesn't get involved in other people's problems. Is that what you want? Don't you dare! Alyssa's voice was ice. Don't you dare threaten to take away my mother's care because you're angry. That's manipulation, and you know it. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to understand what you want from me. I want you to respect me. The words ripped out of Alyssa's throat, raw and painful. I want you to see me as an equal instead of a charity case. I want to be your friend without feeling like I'm constantly in your debt. Her voice broke. I want to matter to you as a person, not as a project. You do matter to me. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. God, Alyssa, you matter to me more than anyone has in years. That's why I did this. Not because I see you as a project, but because the thought of you suffering of losing your mother because I could have helped and didn't, that was unbearable to me. Then you should have talked to me first. Should have respected me enough to include me in the decision. You're right. Adrian ran his hands through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. You're absolutely right. I messed up. I overstepped. And I'm sorry. Genuinely. Deeply sorry. The fight went out of Alyssa all at once. She felt suddenly, overwhelmingly tired. I need to go. Alyssa, please. I need time to think. To process this. She looked at him, and her heart ached at the devastation on his face. You did something kind, Adrian. I know that. Your intentions were good. But good intentions don't erase the fact that you crossed a line I explicitly drew, and I don't know how to get past that. So, what does that mean for us? I don't know. Alyssa's voice was barely a whisper. I honestly don't know. She turned to leave, and Adrian caught her arm gently. Let me call you a car, at least. Please. Alyssa almost said no. Almost insisted on calling her own Uber just to prove a point. But she was too tired to be that petty. Okay. Adrian pulled out his phone and arranged for a car service. They waited in silence, not looking at each other. The weight of everything unsaid, pressing down on them both. When the car arrived, a sleek black sedan, because of course Adrian's car service was fancy, Alyssa walked toward it without looking back. Alyssa? Adrian called after her. She stopped but didn't turn around. I meant what I said. You matter to me. More than you know. Alyssa closed her eyes against the tears threatening to spill over. That's the problem, Adrian. You matter to me too, and I don't know what to do with that anymore. Then she got in the car and let herself be driven away from the mansion, away from Adrian, away from the complicated mess their friendship had become. The driver didn't try to make conversation, which Alyssa was grateful for. She sat in the back seat, watching Seattle slide past the window, and tried to untangle the knot of emotions in her chest. She was angry. She was grateful. She was hurt. She was touched. She was furious that Adrian had overstepped, and simultaneously relieved that her mother's care was secured for the next 6 months. She was falling, in love with a man who saw her as someone who needed saving. That last realization hit her like a freight train. She was falling in love with Adrian Pierce, and that was the most dangerous thing of all, because love between people from different worlds, people with different resources, different lives, different everything, that kind of love was complicated, imbalanced, fraught, with power dynamics that could never truly be equal. How could she be with someone who could solve her problems with the equivalent of pocket change? How could she maintain her independence, her sense of self, when he could simply write a check and make her struggles disappear? And yet, she also remembered the broken man on that rainy street, the way he'd fallen apart in the coffee shop, the way he looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd encountered in years. He wasn't just a wealthy CEO. He was a person, flawed and struggling and desperately trying to find meaning in a life that had lost all its color. He'd overstepped. Yes, made a choice that wasn't his to make. but he'd done it from a place of genuine care, not from a place of superiority or control. The question was, could she forgive him? Could they find a way back to the easy friendship they'd had before everything got complicated? Or had Adrian's grand gesture, well-intentioned as it was, destroyed the fragile thing building between them? Alyssa didn't have answers. All she had was a mother who would be cared for, a debt she could never repay, and a heart that didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. When the car pulled up to her tiny apartment building, Alyssa thanked the driver and climbed out. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, looking up at the flickering light in her second-floor window. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "I'm sorry. For all of it. You were right, I should have talked to you first. Should have respected your boundaries. I'll do better. If you'll give me another chance, I'll do better." Alyssa stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to forgive him, wanted to text back and say it was okay, that they could move past this. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not when the wound was still so fresh. So she typed, "I need time." And then she turned off her phone, climbed the stairs to her apartment, and let herself fall apart in the privacy of her own space. Tomorrow, she'd figure out what came next. Tomorrow, she'd decide if friendship with Adrian Pierce was worth the complications it brought. But tonight, she'd just let herself cry. For the loss of something simple, for the impossibility of what she wanted, for the fact that kindness and love and good intentions weren't always enough to bridge the gap between two people's worlds. And somewhere across the city, in a mansion that cost more than most people would see in a lifetime, Adrian Pierce sat alone in his empty house and wondered if doing the right thing had just cost him the only person who'd made him want to live. Alyssa didn't text Adrian for 5 days. 5 days of silence. That felt like 5 years. She went to work, came home, visited her mother at the nursing home, where she was greeted with the news that Margaret's care was indeed fully paid, and there were no issues whatsoever, and tried to pretend her life hadn't been turned upside down. It didn't work. Everything reminded her of Adrian. The coffee shop where they'd had their first real conversation. The park bench where he'd told her about his ex-wife. The rain that seemed to fall every other day, making her think of that first night when a stranger in an expensive suit had looked at her like she was his lifeline. Her phone sat on her nightstand, silent. Adrian hadn't texted after that first apology, hadn't called, hadn't shown up at Giuseppe's or Betty's. He was giving her the space she'd asked for, and somehow that made everything worse. Because Alyssa realized, with growing clarity, that she didn't actually want space. She wanted things to be different, wanted them to go back to before the money complicated everything, wanted to exist in that bubble where they were just two broken people finding comfort in each other's company. But they couldn't go back. That was the problem. The money had changed things irrevocably. "You look like hell," Betty said on day 6, sliding a cup of coffee across the counter to Alyssa. "When's the last time you actually slept?" "I sleep." Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, doesn't count. Betty lit a cigarette, despite the fact that she was technically indoors and it was definitely illegal. "You gonna tell me what happened, or you gonna keep moping around like someone died?" "Nothing happened." "Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England." Betty took a drag, studying Alyssa with shrewd eyes. "This about that rich boy? The one who was making moon eyes at you?" Alyssa's silence was answer enough. "What did he do?" Alyssa struggled to find the words. "He helped me. With something big. Something I specifically told him not to help with." "And you're mad about it." "Shouldn't I be? He went behind my back." "Did he do it to hurt you?" "No, but did he do it to control you? To hold it over your head?" "No, I don't think—" "Then what exactly are you mad about, honey?" Betty's voice was gentle, which was somehow worse than when she was being blunt. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like someone cared about you enough to help, and you're punishing him for it." "It's more complicated than that. Life's always complicated. doesn't mean we have to make it harder than it needs to be. Betty stubbed out her cigarette. Look, I don't know what he did or how much it cost, but I know you've been dragging yourself through life for 3 years, barely keeping your head up, and I know that for 3 weeks, you were happy, really genuinely happy. So maybe instead of being mad that he helped, you should ask yourself why accepting help feels like such a betrayal. The words hit harder than Alyssa expected. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Betty had a point, a painfully accurate point. Why did accepting help feel like a betrayal? Why did Adrian's generosity make her feel diminished instead of grateful? I need to maintain my independence, Alyssa said finally. I need to feel like I can take care of myself. And you can. You have been, but that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Betty's expression softened. Pride's a funny thing, Alyssa. It keeps us going when times are tough, but it also keeps us from accepting the good things when they come along. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let someone help us carry the weight. Alyssa felt tears prick her eyes. What if he gets tired of helping? What if I become this burden that he eventually resents? Then he's not the man you thought he was. But you won't know unless you give him and yourself a chance. On day 7, Alyssa finally picked up her phone. She stared at Adrian's contact for a long time, her thumb hovering over his name. What would she even say? Sorry, I've been ignoring you for a week because I was too proud to say thank you? Before she could overthink it further, her phone rang. Adrian's name flashed across the screen. Alyssa's heart jumped into her throat. She stared at the ringing phone like it was a bomb about to explode. Then, on the 4th ring, she answered, "Hello, Alyssa." Adrian's voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much recently. "I'm sorry. I know you said you needed time, but I couldn't not call. I need to know if you're okay." "I'm okay." "Are you really? Or are you just saying that?" Alyssa closed her eyes. "I don't know. Both, maybe." A long silence stretched between them. Alyssa could hear Adrian breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing through the phone. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Adrian said finally, "about what you said, about respecting boundaries and seeing you as an equal. And you were right, Alyssa, about all of it. I was so focused on fixing the problem that I didn't stop to consider how it would make you feel. Didn't give you agency in your own life. Adrian, please, let me finish. I need to say this." He took a shaky breath. "I'm used to solving problems. That's what I do. Someone presents an issue, I find a solution, I implement it. It's how I've run my company, how I've lived my life. But you're not a problem to be solved. And I treated you like one. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry." Alyssa felt something loosen in her chest. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but I did hurt you. And that's what matters. Intention doesn't erase impact." Adrian paused. "If you want me to take the money back, I will. I'll figure out how to reverse the payment, and we can pretend it never happened." "No." The word came out before Alyssa could stop it. "Don't take it back. Are you sure? My mother is stable and cared for. The nurses say she's been more relaxed this week, like she can sense that the tension is gone. Taking that away wouldn't help anyone." Alyssa swallowed hard. "But I need you to understand something, Adrian. I need you to hear me. I'm listening. I appreciate what you did. I do. It was generous and kind, and it's given me breathing room I desperately needed. But it can't happen again. Not without talking to me first. Not without including me in the decision. Because if we're going to be whatever we are, I need to feel like I have some control over my own life. Can you understand that?" "Yes." Adrian's voice was firm. "Absolutely yes. No more grand gestures without discussion. No more unilateral decisions. I promise." Alyssa felt relief wash over her. "Okay, good. So, are we okay? Can I see you again?" And there it was. The question Alyssa had been avoiding all week. Because seeing Adrian again meant confronting all the complicated feelings she'd been trying to ignore. Meant acknowledging that this thing between them had moved beyond friendship into territory that terrified her. I want to see you, Alyssa said carefully. But I need us to establish some ground rules first. Whatever you need. I need you to see me as your equal. Not someone you're saving or helping or fixing. Just me, Alyssa. A person who happens to be struggling, but is still fully capable of making her own choices. I do see you that way. I'm sorry if I made you feel otherwise. And I need you to talk to me before making any major decisions that affect my life. Even if you think you're helping. Especially if you think you're helping. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Alyssa took a deep breath. And I need you to be honest with me about what this is. What we are. Because I'm confused, Adrian. Are we friends? Are we something else? Because it feels like something else. But I don't know if that's just in my head, or if you feel it too. The silence that followed was loaded. Alyssa held her breath, waiting. It's not just in your head, Adrian said quietly. I feel it too. Have been feeling it since that first coffee. Maybe even before that, standing in the rain, when you looked at me like I mattered. Alyssa's heart was pounding. So what do we do about it? I don't know. What do you want to do about it? I asked you first, Alyssa. Adrian's voice was soft, almost tender. I'm almost 40 years old. I've been married and divorced. I've built a company from nothing and watched it become something I barely recognize. I've stood on a bridge and considered ending it all. And through all of that, I've never felt what I feel when I'm with you. What do you feel? Alive, present, like I'm actually participating in my own life instead of just observing it from the outside. He paused. You scare the hell out of me, Alyssa Cole, because you've made me want things I thought I couldn't have anymore. Hope, connection, maybe even happiness. Tears were streaming down Alyssa's face. You scare me too, yeah? Yeah, because you're everything I shouldn't want. You're complicated and broken and from a completely different world than mine. And despite all of that, or maybe because of it, I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wishing I could see you. Can't stop? Can't stop what? Falling, Alyssa whispered. I can't stop falling for you, even though I know it's a terrible idea. The sound Adrian made was something between a laugh and a sob. It is a terrible idea. Probably the worst idea either of us has ever had. So we should stop this, before it goes any further. We should, Adrian agreed. Neither of them hung up. I don't want to stop, Alyssa admitted finally. I should want to, but I don't. Neither do I. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. I tried this past week, tried to convince myself that the right thing to do was leave you alone, let you live your life without me complicating it. But Alyssa, I can't. I'm not that strong. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to try. Want to see where this goes, even knowing all the reasons it could fail. Even knowing that I'm probably going to mess it up somehow. He paused. But only if you want that too. Only if you think there's a chance this could work. Alyssa closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This was the moment, the point of no return. If she said yes, if she admitted that she wanted to try, there would be no going back to simple friendship. No pretending this was just two people, helping each other through hard times. This would be real, messy, complicated, potentially devastating, but also potentially wonderful. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I want to try. The relief in Adrian's voice was palpable. Really? Really? But Adrian, I need you to understand, I'm still scared. Still worried about the power imbalance between us. About what happens when reality sets in and you realize I'm just a broke waitress with a mountain of problems. You're not just anything. You're extraordinary. And the only power imbalance I see is that you have the power to make me feel things I thought I'd lost the capacity for. You're being dramatic again. I'm being honest. Alyssa laughed a watery, tear-soaked sound. Okay, so we're doing this. We're actually doing this. We're doing this. Whatever this ends up being. When can I see you? Right now? Adrian's voice was hopeful. I know it's late, but I could come to you. Or you could come here. Or we could meet somewhere. Tomorrow, Alyssa interrupted gently. Let's do this right. Let's have an actual date. Not coffee after my shift or a rushed meeting in a parking lot. A real date. A date. Adrian said the word like he was testing it out. I haven't been on a date in almost 15 years. Then we'll figure it out together. Tomorrow, Adrian agreed. I'll pick you up at 7? I work until 6:30. 7:30 then. And Alyssa? Yeah? Thank you. For giving me another chance. For being willing to try this despite all the reasons you shouldn't. It means more than you know. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I was pushing you away. They said goodnight, and Alyssa sat in her apartment with the phone pressed to her chest, her heart doing acrobatics. She was terrified, elated, confused, hopeful. She was about to start dating a billionaire CEO. The absurdity of it hit her all at once, and she started laughing. Couldn't stop laughing. Because her life had gone from desperately trying to survive to somehow becoming a romance novel plot, and she had no idea how any of this had happened. But as she got ready for bed, Alyssa realized something important. For the first time in 3 years, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Not dreading it, not just trying to survive it. Actually looking forward to it. That had to count for something. Adrian sat in his home office, staring at his phone long after the call had ended. She'd said yes. Alyssa had said yes. He felt like a teenager with his first crush. All nervous energy and racing thoughts. What should he wear? Where should he take her? How did one plan a date with someone who didn't care about expensive restaurants or impressive displays of wealth? His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant, Jennifer. Board meeting moved to 2 p.m. tomorrow. Also, the Forbes interview has been rescheduled for next week. Do you need anything else? Adrian stared at the message. A week ago, those things would have been the most important parts of his day. Now they felt like background noise to the only thing that actually mattered, figuring out how to be worthy of Alyssa's trust. He typed back, "Thanks. Can you also research good date restaurants in Seattle? Nothing too fancy. Somewhere comfortable and unpretentious." There was a long pause. Then, "Did you just ask me to help you plan a date?" "Yes. Is that weird?" "It's unprecedented. But I'll send you a list." "And Adrian, yeah?" "It's good to see you. Different. Lighter." Adrian smiled at his phone. "Thanks, Jen." He spent the next hour researching date ideas like his life depended on it. Restaurants, activities, backup plans in case things went wrong. He wanted everything to be perfect. Wanted Alyssa to feel special without feeling overwhelmed. Wanted to prove that he could do this, could be present and attentive and normal instead of the workaholic ghost his ex-wife had left. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from Alyssa. "I'm nervous." Adrian's heart swelled. He typed back, "Me too. What if we're terrible at this? Then we'll be terrible at it together." That's oddly comforting. I'm full of oddly comforting wisdom. It's my superpower. I thought your superpower was making me laugh when I want to be mad at you. I have multiple superpowers. I'm very talented and very humble. That too. Adrian could feel her smiling through the phone, could picture her in that tiny apartment, lying in bed, probably wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants, being more beautiful than anyone had a right to be. "I should let you sleep," he typed. "Tomorrow's going to come early. It always does. But Adrian, yeah? I'm glad we're doing this. Scared but glad. Me too, Alyssa." "Me too." He set his phone down and looked around his empty office. The success he'd built, the empire he'd created, the beautiful, meaningless life he'd constructed. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, none of it felt empty anymore. Because tomorrow, he had a date with a woman who saw him, really saw him and chose him anyway. That was worth more than all the success in the world. Adrian turned off his computer, left his office, and went to bed with something he hadn't felt in over a year: excitement for what came next. Neither of them slept much that night. Both lay awake in their respective beds, thinking about tomorrow, about the risk they were taking, about all the ways this could go wrong and the small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, it could go right. And across the city, fate held its breath, watching two broken people reach for each other across the divide that separated their worlds. Tomorrow would tell them if the gap was too wide to cross, or if love fragile, complicated, terrifying love was strong enough to build a bridge. Alyssa changed her outfit 4 times before settling on a simple navy dress she'd bought 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding. It was the nicest thing she owned, modest, fitted, nothing fancy. She paired it with the only heels she had that didn't have scuff marks, swept her hair into a loose bun, and applied the bare minimum of makeup because she'd never been good at that stuff anyway. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and tried not to panic. This was a date, a real date, with Adrian Pierce, who probably went on dates with supermodels and venture capitalists and women who wore designer clothes and knew which fork to use for which course. "You're spiraling," Alyssa told her reflection. "Stop spiraling." Her reflection didn't look convinced. At 7:25 p.m., there was a knock on her apartment door. Alyssa's heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed her purse, a worn canvas bag that had seen better days, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Adrian stood in the hallway, and Alyssa's breath caught. He'd dressed casually: dark jeans, a fitted charcoal sweater, a jacket that looked expensive but not ostentatious. His hair was styled but not overly so, and those dark eyes were warm and nervous and entirely focused on her. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and Alyssa felt the nervousness in her chest transform into something warmer, something that felt like coming home. "You look beautiful," Adrian said. "You look pretty good yourself." "I changed 3 times. Alyssa laughed. "I changed 4 times. "Then you win." Adrian held out his hand. "Ready?" Alyssa took his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the gentle strength in his fingers. "Ready." They walked down the narrow staircase of her building, their hands still linked, and Alyssa was acutely aware of everything: the way Adrian shortened his stride to match hers, the faint scent of his cologne, the nervous energy radiating from him that matched her own. Outside, a car waited. Not a limo, thank God, just a nice sedan with a driver who nodded politely but didn't try to engage them in conversation. "Where are we going?" Alyssa asked as they pulled away from the curb. "A restaurant in Fremont. Italian, but not Giuseppe's. I figured you probably get enough of that at work. Small place, family-owned, supposed to have incredible food and zero pretension. You researched this. I may have spent several hours last night reading reviews and cross-referencing them with whether they had reasonable prices and comfortable seating and—" Adrian stopped, looking sheepish. "Yes, I researched it. Too much? It's kind of adorable, actually. Adorable. That's not usually a word associated with me." "Well, congratulations. You're adorable when you're nervous." Adrian squeezed her hand. "I'm terrified, if we're being honest. I haven't done this in 15 years, and I really don't want to mess it up. Then we're even, because I haven't dated in 3 years, and I'm pretty sure I've forgotten how to do this too." 3 years? Kind of hard to maintain a relationship when you're working 80 hours a week and your mother is slowly forgetting who you are. Alyssa said it lightly, but she felt Adrian's hand tighten around hers. "I'm sorry. For all of it. Don't be. It's just life, and honestly, I wouldn't have had time for you even if we'd met a year ago. I was too deep in survival mode to see anything else." And now, Alyssa looked at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, at the way he was looking at her like she was something precious. Now I'm trying to figure out how to live instead of just survive. And maybe you're part of that. The restaurant was exactly as Adrian had described, small, warm, with mismatched wooden tables and the kind of authentic Italian atmosphere that came from actually being run by an Italian family. The owner, a man in his 60s with a thick Neapolitan accent, greeted them like old friends and led them to a corner table by the window. "Your server will be right with you," he said with a wink. "And the wine tonight, it's from my cousin's vineyard in Tuscany. Very good. You'll like." They ordered wine they couldn't properly pronounce, food that sounded incredible, and then sat across from each other in the soft candlelight. Suddenly awkward. "So," Adrian said. "So," Alyssa echoed. "I'm really bad at this." "Me too." They both laughed, and the tension broke. "Okay, new plan," Alyssa said. "Let's play a game. We each get to ask the other person 5 questions. Anything we want. But we have to answer honestly. Anything. Within reason. No asking for social security numbers or childhood traumas we're not ready to discuss." Adrian smiled. "Fair. You go first." Alyssa thought for a moment. "What's your biggest regret?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "My marriage. Not the marriage itself, but how I handled it. I loved my wife at least, I thought I did, but I never made time for her. Never prioritized her over work. Never learned how to be present instead of just physically there. By the time I realized what I was losing, she'd already checked out emotionally. The divorce was just paperwork at that point." "Do you still love her?" "That's question 2. "Fine. Do you?" "No, I don't think I have for a long time. What I loved was the idea of her of having a partner, a life outside of work. But I never put in the effort to actually build that life. So no, I don't love her. But I do regret failing her." Alyssa nodded, absorbing this. "Your turn. What do you want?" Adrian asked. "Not what you think you should want, or what you've been told to want. What do you actually want from your life?" The question caught Alyssa off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, then really thought about it. "I want to stop being tired," she said finally. "I want to wake up in the morning and not immediately start calculating how many hours I'll need to work to pay my bills. I want to visit my mother without feeling guilty that I can't afford better care or spend more time with her. I want—" She paused, surprised by the emotion in her voice. "I want to feel like I'm living my own life instead of just surviving someone else's tragedy." "That's not selfish," Adrian said softly, reading her expression. "It feels selfish. It's not. It's human." The wine arrived, and they both took grateful sips. The server took their order: pasta for Alyssa, risotto for Adrian, and left them alone again. "My turn," Alyssa said. "Why did you go to the bridge that night?" "What specifically made that the breaking point?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass. "It was my ex-wife's wedding day. I saw the announcement on social media she'd gotten remarried. To the high school teacher? They looked happy. Really, genuinely happy. And I realized that she'd moved on, built a new life, found someone who could give her what I couldn't. And I was still stuck in the same place, alone in my mansion, successful and empty, and so goddamn lonely I couldn't breathe." His voice cracked slightly. "I looked around my office, this beautiful office, with windows overlooking the entire city, and I thought, this is it. This is all there is. I won the game, and there's no prize. So I got in my car and drove to the bridge because I couldn't imagine doing this for another 30 years. Couldn't imagine waking up alone, going to meaningless meetings, pretending to care about stock prices and quarterly earnings when nothing mattered. Nothing meant anything." Alyssa reached across the table and took his hand. "But you didn't jump. I didn't jump. I stood there for, I don't know how long, trying to make myself do it. And I couldn't. Not because I suddenly wanted to live, but because I was too much of a coward to die." He looked up at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Until you made me want to live, made me remember what it felt like to connect with another person. You saved my life, Alyssa. Not just by paying for that taxi, but by seeing me, really seeing me. Adrian. Your turn to ask, he said quickly, wiping at his eyes. Alyssa wanted to say something profound, something that would ease the pain she saw in his face, but words felt inadequate. So instead, she held his hand tighter and asked her next question. What are you most afraid of? Right now? Losing you, messing this up somehow, proving that I'm still that same emotionally unavailable ghost who can't maintain real connections. Adrian met her eyes. What about you? What are you most afraid of? That you'll wake up one day and realize I'm not worth all this complication. That the novelty of dating someone real and grounded will wear off, and you'll see me for what I actually am, a broke waitress with a dying mother and no prospects. That's not what I see when I look at you. What do you see? Someone strong, someone who's survived things that would have broken most people. Someone who gives and gives even when she has nothing left. Someone who makes me want to be better. Adrian's voice was intense. I see someone extraordinary who doesn't realize how extraordinary she is, and that breaks my heart a little. The food arrived then, giving them both a moment to collect themselves. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the tension of the heavy conversation easing into something softer. This is really good, Alyssa said around a mouthful of pasta. It is. My turn to ask. What's one thing you'd do if money wasn't an issue? Alyssa didn't even have to think. Go back to school. I was studying graphic design before my dad died. Had to drop out to help pay bills. Then when my mom got sick, there was never time or money to go back. But if I could, I'd finish my degree, maybe start my own design business. Something creative. Something mine. You wanted to be a designer? Want. Present tense. I still want it. I just accepted that it's not realistic anymore. Adrian looked like he wanted to say something, probably something about how he could help make it realistic, but he caught himself. Your turn. If you could change one decision in your life, what would it be? I would have gone to therapy after my divorce instead of burying myself in work. Would have dealt with my issues instead of pretending they didn't exist. Maybe then I wouldn't have ended up on that bridge. He paused. Actually, no. If I changed that, I might not have met you. So maybe I wouldn't change anything after all. That's a very romantic answer. I'm feeling very romantic right now. They shared a smile, and Alyssa felt warmth bloom in her chest. This was working. Against all odds, despite all the complications, this was actually working. They finished dinner, declined dessert, and walked out into the cool Seattle night. Adrian's driver was waiting, but Adrian waved him off. Can we walk for a bit? He asked Alyssa. In heels? You're lucky I like you. I could carry you. Don't you dare. They walked through Fremont, past the quirky shops and street art, hands linked, shoulders brushing. Alyssa's feet hurt, but she didn't care. This moment, this simple, perfect moment, was worth a little pain. I have one more question, Adrian said as they paused by the Fremont troll sculpture, a massive concrete troll clutching a real Volkswagen Beetle under the Aurora Bridge. Okay, can I kiss you? Alyssa's heart stopped. She looked up at him, at the way the streetlight caught his features, at the vulnerability and hope in his eyes. Yes, she whispered. Adrian cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Then he leaned in, and Alyssa closed her eyes, and when their lips met, it was soft and tentative and absolutely perfect. The kiss deepened slowly, naturally. Alyssa's hands found their way to Adrian's chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. And for a moment, the world disappeared. There was no struggling waitress, no damaged CEO, no complicated circumstances. just two people finding each other in the darkness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. That was, yeah, Alyssa agreed. Can we do it again? Definitely. The second kiss was less tentative, more certain. Alyssa felt herself melting into it, into him, into the impossible possibility of this actually working. They eventually made it back to Alyssa's apartment, taking the stairs slowly, stopping every few steps to kiss again. At her door, Alyssa hesitated. I'd invite you in, but… Too soon, Adrian finished. I know, I agree. I want to do this right, Alyssa. Want to take our time? Even though we're both clearly terrible at taking things slow, especially because we're terrible at it. He kissed her forehead. Besides, anticipation makes everything better. You're a tease. I'm a gentleman. You can be both. Adrian laughed, and the sound made Alyssa's heart soar. Text me when you're inside, so I know you're safe. You're literally watching me walk into my apartment. Humor me. Alyssa rolled her eyes but smiled. Fine. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Alyssa. She slipped inside, closed the door, and immediately texted, I'm inside. Safe and sound. And that was the best first date I've ever had. His response was immediate. Same. Sleep well. Dream about me, conceited much? Just hopeful. Alyssa got ready for bed with a smile on her face that wouldn't quit. She felt lighter than she had in years. Happy? Actually, genuinely happy. She was falling asleep when her phone buzzed one more time. A photo from Adrian, a selfie of him in the car, looking ridiculous and happy and perfectly imperfect. The caption read, Proof that I'm smiling like an idiot because of you. Alyssa saved the photo, set it as her phone background, and fell asleep, still smiling. 3 blocks away, a man sat in a parked car, reviewing the photos on his camera. He'd been following Adrian Pierce for 2 weeks now, hired by a competitor who wanted dirt on the CEO. Usually, these assignments were boring photos of business meetings, lunch with investors, nothing scandalous. But tonight had been different. Tonight, Adrian had gone on a date with a woman who was clearly not from his usual social circle. The investigator had photographed them at dinner, walking through Fremont, kissing under the streetlight by the Troll. He pulled up the clearest photo Adrian and Alyssa, wrapped in each other's arms, kissing like they were the only 2 people in the world. This was gold. This was exactly what his client had been hoping for. He attached the photos to an email, typed a quick summary, and hit send. The investigator didn't know that his email would set off a chain of events that would threaten to destroy everything Adrian and Alyssa were building. Didn't know that in 3 days, those photos would be everywhere. Didn't know that he'd just lit the fuse on a bomb that would explode both their lives. He just knew he'd get paid. And in the digital darkness, the email flew through cyberspace, carrying with it the seeds of devastation. For 3 glorious days, Alyssa lived in a bubble. She and Adrian texted constantly. Good morning messages that made her smile before her feet even hit the floor. Photos of ridiculous things throughout the day, Adrian's lunch that looked suspiciously like something a child would eat. Alyssa's elaborate latte art that accidentally looked inappropriate. Late-night calls where they talked about everything and nothing until one of them fell asleep mid-sentence. They had a second date, coffee, and a walk through the Seattle Art Museum. Adrian had been adorably awkward trying to interpret modern art, and Alyssa had laughed until her sides hurt when he'd stood in front of a piece called Void and said, I think it's my soul. Very accurate. They'd kissed goodbye in the museum parking lot, and Alyssa had gone to work floating on air. On the 3rd day, Betty noticed. You're humming. I don't hum. You're humming right now, and you've been smiling at your phone every 5 minutes. Whatever happened with your rich boy? I'm guessing you worked it out? Alyssa couldn't help the grin that spread across her face. We worked it out. Good. About time you had something to smile about. Betty paused, her expression turning serious. Just be careful, honey. The higher you fly, the harder the fall. Why does everyone keep warning me about falling? Because we've all been young and in love before. And we remember what it feels like when reality crashes the party. But Alyssa didn't want to think about reality crashing anything. She wanted to stay in this perfect bubble where she was just a girl falling for a guy, and everything was simple and beautiful and right. The bubble burst at 2:47 p.m. On Thursday afternoon, Alyssa was wiping down tables at Betty's when her phone started buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times, 4. She pulled it out, frowning, and her stomach dropped. Text after text from numbers she didn't recognize. Is this the Alyssa Cole dating Adrian Pierce? How much is he paying you? Gold digger bitch, you're all over the news. Alyssa's hands started shaking. She opened her browser and typed in her own name. The search results made her blood run cold. Tech billionaire Adrian Pierce's secret romance with struggling waitress. From rags to riches? Adrian Pierce spotted with mystery woman. Is she after his fortune? Inside Adrian Pierce's questionable new relationship and photos. So many photos. Of her and Adrian at the restaurant, walking through Fremont, kissing by the troll. Her face was clearly visible in every single one. Alyssa clicked on the first article with trembling fingers. Tech mogul Adrian Pierce, CEO of Apex Dynamics, and recently named one of Forbes's most influential leaders under 40, has been spotted in what appears to be a romantic relationship with Alyssa Cole, 28, a waitress at multiple Seattle establishments. Sources close to Pierce indicate this is his first public relationship since his divorce 14 months ago from Emily Pierce, née Harrison, who has since remarried. The stark difference in the couple's financial situations has raised eyebrows in Seattle's tech community, with many questioning the nature of the relationship. It's textbook, says one anonymous source. Vulnerable recently divorced billionaire meets struggling woman with financial problems. Either he's being taken advantage of, or this is some kind of charity project gone wrong. Public records show that Chen's mother is currently residing at Evergreen Care Facility, an expensive memory care center. The cost of such care typically exceeds $6,000 monthly, well beyond the means of a service worker's salary. Attempts to reach both Pierce and Chen for comment were unsuccessful. Alyssa felt like she was going to throw up. They'd turned her life into a story, had reduced her mother's illness to a plot point, had made her relationship with Adrian sound sordid and calculated. Her phone rang. Adrian's name flashed on the screen. Alyssa, I'm so sorry. His voice was tight with stress. How did this happen? Alyssa's voice was barely above a whisper. How did they find out? How do they know about my mother? About where I work? I don't know. Someone must have been following us, taking photos, and they dug into your background public records, probably. Alyssa, I'm getting my legal team involved. We can sue for invasion of privacy. Your legal team. Alyssa laughed, but it came out bitter. Of course you have a legal team. This is bad, I know, but we can handle it. Together. Just don't read the comments, okay? Don't engage with any of it. But Alyssa had already scrolled down. The comments section was a cesspool. She's obviously a gold digger. Look at her. She's not even that pretty. Poor guy probably thinks she actually cares about him. How long until she's pregnant with the billionaire's baby? At least she's not hiding what she is. A broke waitress landing a billionaire? That's the American dream right there, Alyssa. Are you still there? I have to go. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Wait, don't. She hung up. And then, because she couldn't handle any more, she turned off her phone entirely. What's going on? Betty appeared at her elbow, concern etched on her weathered face. Alyssa wordlessly handed her the phone, the article still displayed on the screen. Betty read it, her expression darkening. Oh, honey, they made me sound like a prostitute, like I'm using him for money. Anyone with half a brain can see that's not true. But do they have half a brain? Look at those comments, Betty. They've already decided what I am, what we are. Alyssa felt tears streaming down her face. She wiped at them angrily. 3 days. We had 3 days of being normal, of just being two people who liked each other. And now the whole world thinks they know our story. Who cares what the world thinks? I care. My mother's in that article. My workplace is in that article. These people strangers, they know everything about me now. Where I work, where my mother lives, how much her care costs. They've turned my life into entertainment. Her phone, still in Betty's hand, lit up with another notification. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. Turn it off, Alyssa said. Please, just turn it off. Betty powered down the phone and set it on the counter. You want to go home? I want to disappear. That's not an option. So what's the next best thing? Alyssa looked around the diner, at the handful of customers who were definitely staring at her now, probably Googling her name, probably comparing her to the photos online. She felt exposed, violated, like her skin had been peeled back, and everything private and painful about her life was on display for the world to judge. I need to talk to Adrian, face to face. You sure that's a good idea right now? You're upset. I need to see him. Need to figure out how we're going to handle this. Betty studied her face for a long moment. Okay, go. I'll cover your shift. Betty, you don't have to go, Alyssa. Talk to your man. Figure this out together. But honey, Betty's voice softened. Remember, he didn't do this to you. Someone else did. Don't let them destroy what you two are building. Alyssa nodded, grabbed her purse, and walked out into the afternoon sun. She felt numb, disconnected from her own body, like she was watching this happen to someone else. She took the bus to Medina because of course she did, because she couldn't afford an Uber, and that fact was now part of the public record, and stood outside Adrian's gate for a full minute before pressing the intercom. Alyssa? Adrian's voice crackled through the speaker. I'm so glad you're here. I'll open the gate. The massive iron gates swung open, and Alyssa walked up the long driveway to the house that looked even more imposing in the daylight. A mansion. An actual mansion, with probably 10 bedrooms and a view of the lake and security systems that cost more than her yearly salary, and she was the broke waitress dating the man who owned it. The internet was right. This was absurd. Adrian opened the door before she could knock. He looked terrible, hair disheveled, face drawn, still in pajama pants and a t-shirt at 3 in the afternoon. Thank God you're here. I've been going crazy. I called you 17 times. My phone's off. Come in, please. We need to talk about how to handle this. Alyssa stepped into the foyer, and the contrast hit her like a punch to the gut. Marble floors, original art on the walls, a chandelier that probably cost more than her mother's entire year of care. This was Adrian's world, his palace of wealth and privilege, and she was wearing a diner uniform with a coffee stain on the collar. How did this happen? Alyssa asked, her voice hollow. How did someone get those photos? I don't know. Jennifer, my assistant, is looking into it. But Alyssa, there are private investigators who do this kind of thing. They follow public figures, looking for stories to sell to tabloids. Someone must have been tailing me, and they know about my mother, about how much her care costs, about where I work, multiple places. Alyssa's voice was rising. They dug into my life, Adrian. My private, personal life. And now it's all out there for everyone to see and judge. I know, and I'm so sorry. If I'd known this would happen, you should have known. The words burst out of her. You're a billionaire CEO. Of course people are watching you. Of course they'd be interested in who you're dating. How did you not see this coming? Adrian flinched. You're right. I should have warned you. Should have prepared you for the possibility that our relationship might become public. I wanted to pretend we were normal, that we could have this without all the complications. But we're not normal. That's the point! You live in a mansion in Medina, and I live in a studio apartment where I can touch both walls if I stretch my arms out. You have a legal team and an assistant and security gates. I have $17 in my checking account and 3 jobs that barely cover my bills. We were never normal, Adrian. We were just pretending. So what are you saying? Adrian's voice was carefully controlled, but Alyssa could hear the fear underneath. You want to end this? Because some assholes took photos and wrote a hit piece. I'm saying this is exactly what I was afraid of. The power imbalance, the way your world and mine don't fit together. The fact that being with you puts a target on my back that I never asked for. Then we fight back. We tell our story. We show them that what we have is real. Is it real, though? The question hung in the air between them. Or is this just 2 broken people trying to fix each other? You with your empty life, me with my desperate circumstances? Maybe everyone's right. Maybe this is just convenience disguised as connection. You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore. Alyssa's voice cracked. 3 days ago I was happy. Really genuinely happy. And now I'm standing in your mansion, reading articles that call me a gold digger, getting text messages from strangers calling me a whore, and wondering if any of this was ever real, or if I was just naive enough to think a waitress could date a billionaire without consequences. Adrian crossed the space between them in 2 strides, grabbing her shoulders gently. Look at me. Look at me, Alyssa. She did, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. This is real. What I feel for you is real. More real than anything I've felt in my entire adult life. I don't care what those articles say, or what strangers on the internet think. I know what we have. And I thought you knew it too. I did. I do. But Adrian... Alyssa's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Because this is just the beginning. If we stay together, this is my life now. Being photographed. Being judged. Having every aspect of my existence picked apart by people who don't know me. Is what we have worth that? Yes. Adrian said it without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. You're worth all of it and more. But am I worth it to you when it affects your company? Your reputation? What happens when your board of directors sees these articles? When your investors start questioning your judgment? I don't give a damn what they think. You should. This is your life's work, Adrian. Your company. You can't just ignore the fallout because you want this to work. Adrian's hands tightened on her shoulders. Are you breaking up with me? I'm trying to be realistic about what this relationship costs. For both of us. That's not an answer. Alyssa pulled away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. I need time. Need to think about whether I can actually do this, be with you publicly, deal with the scrutiny, handle having my life dissected by strangers. I need to know if I'm strong enough for this. You are. I know you are. You don't know that. You don't know how I'll handle this in a week, or a month, or a year, when there's another article, another scandal, another invasion of privacy. You don't know if I'll break under the pressure. Then let me help you handle it. Let me stand beside you while we figure this out together. That's the problem, Adrian. You keep trying to help me. Keep trying to fix things. But some things can't be fixed. Sometimes the situation is just impossible. The word landed like a death sentence. Don't say that. Adrian's voice was raw. Don't call us impossible. What else would you call it? A billionaire and a waitress? Your world and mine? It sounds like a fairy tale, but fairy tales aren't real. And real life has consequences we're only just starting to see. Alyssa's phone, still off in her purse, felt like a weight. She knew that when she turned it back on, there would be hundreds more messages, more articles, more judgment, more evidence that this beautiful thing between them was going to be destroyed by the world's scrutiny. I need to go, she said quietly. Need to be alone. Need to think. Alyssa, please, don't. She held up a hand. Don't make this harder than it already is. Just give me space. Let me figure out if I can actually do this. How much time do you need? I don't know. A few days? Maybe more. I need to be able to breathe without feeling like the world is watching and judging every move I make. Adrian looked like she'd physically struck him, but he nodded. Okay, take whatever time you need. But Alyssa, I'm not giving up on us. On you. No matter what those articles say or how long you need to think, I'm not walking away. Maybe you should. Well, I'm not. So you're stuck with me wanting you, even when you're trying to push me away. Despite everything, Alyssa felt a small smile tug at her lips. You're stubborn. I'm in love with you. The words stopped Alyssa's heart. She stared at him, and Adrian looked just as surprised as she felt that he'd said them out loud. I'm in love with you, he repeated, more firmly this time. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life, and I need you to know that before you go. Before you spend the next few days talking yourself out of this. I love you, Alyssa Cole, and I'm willing to fight for us, even if you're not sure you are yet. Tears streamed down Alyssa's face. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. But it's true. Alyssa wanted to say it back, wanted to tell him that she loved him too, that these past 3 weeks had been the best of her life, that the thought of losing him made her chest ache in ways she didn't know were possible. But the words stuck in her throat, because saying them out loud would make this real, would make the stakes impossibly high, would make walking away, if that's what she needed to do, absolutely devastating. I have to go, she said, instead. Adrian didn't try to stop her this time, just watched as she walked to the door, his expression a mixture of pain and hope and desperate longing. At the door, Alyssa turned back. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes yet either. I need to figure out if I'm brave enough for this. You're the bravest person I know. Then I guess we'll find out if you're right. Alyssa walked out of the mansion, down the long driveway, through the gate that closed automatically behind her. She walked to the bus stop and waited, ignoring the stares from other people waiting, ignoring her phone that she could feel buzzing in her purse even though it was turned off. And when she finally got home to her tiny apartment, she collapsed on her bed and let herself fall completely apart. Because Adrian Pierce loved her. A billionaire CEO loved her. And instead of being the happiest moment of her life, it was terrifying. Because love meant vulnerability, meant letting someone in, meant accepting that from this moment forward, her life was tied to his in ways that couldn't be undone. And Alyssa didn't know if she was strong enough to survive being loved by someone the whole world was watching. She cried until she had no tears left. Then she turned on her phone and read every cruel comment, every invasive article, every speculation about her motivations and character. She needed to see the worst of it. Needed to know exactly what she was signing up for if she chose to stay with Adrian. And when she was done, when she'd absorbed every bit of venom the internet had to offer, Alyssa made a decision. She didn't know yet if it was the right one, but it was hers to make, and that had to count for something. Alyssa didn't call Adrian for 6 days. 6 days of radio silence that felt like 6 years. She went to work, though Giuseppe had to turn away 3 reporters who showed up asking questions about the waitress dating Adrian Pierce. She visited her mother, who thankfully didn't understand any of the chaos, just smiled vaguely and asked if Alyssa had brought cookies. She read every article, every comment, every think piece about wealth gaps and power dynamics, and whether their relationship was problematic or romantic, depending on who was writing. BuzzFeed ran a poll. Is Alyssa Cole a gold digger or a modern Cinderella? The results were split almost exactly down the middle. A lifestyle blogger wrote an entire essay titled "Why Rich Men Dating Poor Women is Always Exploitative, Even When It Looks Like Love." Someone on Twitter started a thread speculating about whether Adrian had a savior complex and Alyssa had daddy issues. Every piece of her life was dissected, analyzed, debated by people who had never met her, who didn't know that she made dumplings from her grandmother's recipe when she was stressed, who didn't know she'd cried for 3 days straight when her father died, who didn't know she sang off-key to terrible pop music when she cleaned her apartment. They didn't know her, but they had opinions about her anyway. On day 4, Betty sat her down during a slow afternoon shift. "You're gonna make yourself sick, reading all that garbage. I need to know what I'm dealing with." What you're dealing with is a bunch of strangers with too much time on their hands and not enough going on in their own lives. Betty lit a cigarette, her perpetual act of rebellion against the no-smoking laws. The real question is, do you love him? It doesn't matter if I love him. That's the only thing that matters. How can you say that? My entire life is on display. People are calling me a whore, Betty. A gold digger. They're saying I'm using him, that I probably got pregnant on purpose, that I'm... People say a lot of things. Doesn't make any of it true. Betty took a long drag. I've been alive 72 years, Alyssa, and I've learned that there are only 2 kinds of decisions you regret. The ones you make out of fear, and the ones you don't make at all. So I'm asking you again, do you love him? Alyssa's throat tightened. Yes. Then what the hell are you doing sitting here, letting strangers on the internet decide your life for you? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You love him. He loves you. Everything else is noise. But it wasn't just noise. On day 5, Alyssa got a call from the nursing home. "Ms. Cole, this is Sandra again. I'm calling because we've had some incidents." Alyssa's stomach dropped. "What kind of incidents?" "Reporters have been trying to gain access to the facility, claiming to be family members, delivery people, maintenance workers. We've turned them all away, but I wanted you to be aware. We've also increased security around your mother's wing, and we've flagged her room as having additional privacy restrictions." "Oh my God! Your mother is safe. We won't let anyone near her who isn't on the approved visitor list. But, Ms. Cole, you might want to consider putting out some kind of statement, just to take the pressure off. These people are relentless when they think there's a story." After she hung up, Alyssa sat on her bed and tried not to throw up. They'd gone after her mother. Actually tried to get access to a woman with Alzheimer's who couldn't consent to being interviewed, who wouldn't even understand what was happening. That's when Alyssa realized this wasn't going to stop. Not unless she did something about it. She picked up her phone and, for the first time in 6 days, called Adrian. He answered on the first ring. Alyssa. Just her name. But it was filled with so much relief and hope and barely restrained emotion that it made her chest ache. "We need to talk. In person." "When? Where?" "I can come to you right now. Your place, tonight. 7 o'clock. Okay. Yes, I'll be here." "Alyssa, I'll see you tonight, Adrian." She hung up before he could say anything else, before she could lose her nerve. At 6:45 p.m., Alyssa stood outside Adrian's gate again. She'd dressed carefully this time, jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down, minimal makeup. She looked like herself. Not the glamorous gold digger from the articles, not the desperate waitress from the comment sections. Just Alyssa. She pressed the intercom. "It's me." The gates opened immediately. Adrian was waiting at the door, and Alyssa's heart clenched at the sight of him. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept properly in days. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, his clothes rumpled. But when he saw her, his face transformed into something so full of hope and longing that Alyssa almost turned around and ran. "Come in," he said softly. They sat in his living room, a space that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. All clean lines and expensive furniture and windows overlooking the lake. Alyssa perched on the edge of a couch that probably cost more than her car. "I'm sorry," Adrian started, "for all of it, for not anticipating this, for not protecting you better, for—" "Stop." Alyssa held up a hand. "I didn't come here for apologies. I came here because I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to all of it before you respond. Can you do that?" Adrian nodded, his jaw tight. Alyssa took a deep breath. "I've spent the last 6 days trying to figure out if I can do this, if I'm strong enough to be with you publicly, to handle the scrutiny, to build a life with someone who lives in a completely different world than I do. And I've realized something." She paused, gathering her courage. "I realized that I've been approaching this all wrong. I've been asking myself if I can handle your world, if I can survive being the waitress dating the billionaire, if I can deal with people judging me and dissecting my life. But those are the wrong questions." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "What are the right questions?" "The right questions are, do I love you? Do you love me? Are we good for each other? Do we make each other better? And the answer to all of those is yes." Alyssa's voice shook slightly. "I love you, Adrian. I think I've loved you since that first coffee, when you fell apart and let me see the real you. And I know that what we have is real. It's messy and complicated and inconvenient, but it's real." Hope flickered across Adrian's face, but Alyssa held up her hand again. "But here's the thing. I can't keep living like this. I can't wake up every morning wondering what new article has been written about me, what new speculation is trending, what new invasion of privacy I'm going to have to deal with. Yesterday, reporters tried to get access to my mother, to a woman with Alzheimer's who can't consent to being interviewed. And I realized that as long as I'm with you, this is my life. The scrutiny, the judgment, the complete lack of privacy. So you're ending this." Adrian's voice was flat, defeated. "No. I'm asking you to make a choice." Adrian looked confused. "What choice? We can't hide. We can't pretend we're just two normal people having a normal relationship. Your life is too public, and mine is now too. So we have two options. We can break up and let this die down, or we can own it. We can tell our story, the real story, not the version the tabloids have created, and deal with whatever comes after. You want to go public? Officially. I want to control the narrative instead of letting it control us. I want to show people who we actually are, instead of letting them decide for us." Alyssa leaned forward. "But Adrian, if we do this, we're all in. No more hiding. No more pretending this is just casual. We're together, publicly, and whatever comes with that, good or bad, we face together. Can you do that?" "Yes." Adrian didn't hesitate. "Absolutely yes." "But Alyssa, are you sure? Once we do this, there's no taking it back. You'll be permanently linked to me in the public eye." "I know, and that terrifies me. But you know what terrifies me more? Losing you because I was too afraid to fight for us." Alyssa felt tears prick her eyes. "You told me you loved me, and I was too scared to say it back. But I'm saying it now, I love you, Adrian Pierce. I love your broken pieces and your terrible jokes, and the way you look at me, like I'm the only real thing in your manufactured world. I love that you fell apart in a coffee shop and trusted me to hold the pieces. I love that you're stubborn and dramatic and willing to fight for something you believe in." Adrian was across the space between them before she could take another breath, pulling her into his arms, pressing his face into her hair. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you." Alyssa pulled back to look at him, cupping his face in her hands. "I love you, and I'm choosing you. Choosing us, even though it's scary and complicated, and probably the craziest thing I've ever done." Adrian kissed her, then hard and desperate, and full of 6 days of missing her, 6 days of thinking he'd lost her, 6 days of loving her from a distance, and not knowing if she'd come back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "What do we do now?" "Now we fight back. Together." 3 hours later, Alyssa and Adrian sat in his home office, working with his PR team via video conference. Jennifer, his assistant, had pulled in a crisis management specialist named Rebecca, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd handled scandals for politicians and celebrities and didn't seem remotely fazed by their situation. "Here's what I'm thinking," Rebecca said, her face serious on the screen. "You do one interview, one outlet, your choice. You tell your story, how you met, what you mean to each other, why the media narrative is wrong. You humanize yourselves, show people you're not a scandal or a fairy tale, you're just two people who fell in love." "Which outlet?" Adrian asked. "I'd suggest Seattle Times. Local paper, respected journalism, less likely to sensationalize. Or, if you want to go bigger, maybe a morning show. Good Morning America, Today's Show. Something with broad reach, but still reputable." Alyssa felt her stomach clench. "National television?" "The story's already national, Alyssa. Might as well control how it's told." "What if it makes things worse?" Alyssa asked. "What if we do an interview and people still think I'm a gold digger?" "Some people will always think that, no matter what you say or do. But right now, they're filling in the blanks themselves, creating a narrative based on speculation and photographs. If you tell your own story, at least it's the truth out there, not just assumptions." Adrian took Alyssa's hand. "What do you think?" Alyssa looked at their joined hands, at the way his thumb was tracing circles on her palm, a gesture that had become familiar, comforting. She thought about the past 6 days, about the articles and comments and invasive questions, about standing outside Adrian's gate, trying to decide if love was worth the price of admission. "Let's do it," she said finally. "Let's tell our story," Rebecca nodded approvingly. "Good. I'll reach out to my contacts, see who's interested. In the meantime, I need you both to write down everything how you met, key moments in your relationship, what you want people to understand about you. Be honest, be vulnerable. That's what's going to resonate." They spent the next 2 hours doing exactly that, writing out their story, from the rainy street to the coffee shop confession, to the first date, to the moment everything became public. Alyssa wrote about her mother, about her struggles, about why Adrian's help had felt like both a blessing and a violation. Adrian wrote about the bridge, about the emptiness that had consumed him, about how Alyssa had given him a reason to live. It was raw, painful, deeply personal. And by the time they were done, Alyssa felt emotionally wrung out. "It's late," Adrian said, glancing at the clock. "Nearly midnight. Stay here tonight. I have guest rooms, you don't have to. I just don't want you going home alone this late." Alyssa should have said no, should have maintained some boundaries. But she was exhausted and emotionally fragile, and the thought of being alone in her apartment sounded unbearable. "Okay." Adrian showed her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed, ensuite bathroom, windows overlooking the lake. It was beautiful and impersonal and somehow made Alyssa feel even more alone. She was getting ready for bed, wearing one of Adrian's t-shirts, because she hadn't brought anything when there was a soft knock on the door. "Come in." Adrian stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "I just wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. Towels, toiletries, Anything, Adrian. Yeah? Can you stay with me? Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone right now. The relief on his face was palpable. Yeah, yes, of course. They climbed into the massive bed together, and Alyssa immediately curled into Adrian's side, her head on his chest, his arm around her. It was comfortable and safe, and exactly what she needed. Thank you, Adrian murmured into her hair, for coming back, for choosing this, for being brave enough to fight for us when I was terrified you wouldn't. Thank you for being worth fighting for. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, facing an uncertain future, but facing it together. And for the first time in 6 days, Alyssa slept deeply and dreamlessly. The weight of her decision finally lifted. But while Alyssa and Adrian slept, the internet was working overtime. Someone had spotted Alyssa entering Adrian's mansion, had photographed her car borrowed from Giuseppe for the evening outside his gate, had posted the photos online with speculation about a reconciliation. The story grew legs. Within hours, hybrid Alyssa and Adrian was trending on Twitter. Fan accounts sprang up overnight. People were choosing sides Team Alyssa or Team She's Obviously Using Him. A blog post went viral. Why we're all so invested in the Adrian Pierce romance and what that says about us. And in a corner office in downtown Seattle, a man named Ryan Cole read about his estranged sister for the first time in 5 years. Ryan, Alyssa's older brother, who'd cut off contact with the family when their father died because he'd needed space. And apparently that space required him to disappear, entirely stared at his computer screen in shock. His little sister, dating a billionaire, splashed across every gossip site and news outlet. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in half a decade. Alyssa? It's Ryan. We need to talk. The call went to voicemail. Alyssa's phone was on silent, resting on the nightstand in Adrian's guest room while she slept peacefully for the first time in a week. She didn't know her brother had resurfaced, didn't know he'd seen the articles and was coming back into her life after years of silence, didn't know that his reappearance would complicate everything even further. But she would find out soon enough. Because the thing about going public with your life is that it doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone connected to you. And sometimes, the people from your past show up when you least expect them, bringing with them old wounds and new problems and proof that the hardest part of fighting for love isn't the public scrutiny, it's navigating the private complications that the public eye reveals. Alyssa woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from unknown numbers, reporters probably, or internet trolls who'd somehow gotten her personal information. But 3 were from a number she hadn't seen in 5 years. A number she'd deleted from her contacts but still recognized, burned into her memory like a brand. Ryan, her older brother, the one who'd disappeared when their father died, who'd said he couldn't handle the grief and needed to process things alone, and then had proceeded to process them for 5 entire years without a single phone call, text, or acknowledgement that he still had family. Alyssa sat up in bed. Adrian's guest bed. She remembered with a jolt and stared at the messages. Alyssa, it's Ryan. I saw the news. We need to talk. I know it's been a long time, but I'm your brother. Call me back. I'm worried about you. That man you're with, do you really know him? Call me, please. Alyssa felt rage build in her chest, hot and immediate. He was worried about her? Now, after 5 years of silence, after missing their mother's diagnosis, her decline, every single struggle Alyssa had faced alone. Everything okay? She looked up to find Adrian standing in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. He was already dressed casual, but put together in a way that suggested he'd been up for a while. My brother called. Adrian's eyebrows rose. I didn't know you had a brother. I don't. Not really. He disappeared 5 years ago and hasn't bothered to check in since. Alyssa took the coffee cup Adrian offered, grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. Until now that I'm dating someone famous, suddenly he remembers I exist. What did he say? Alyssa read the messages aloud, her voice dripping with sarcasm on, "I'm worried about you." Adrian sat on the edge of the bed, his expression dark. "So he's been gone for 5 years, through everything with your mother, all your struggles, and now he surfaces because you're in the news." Apparently. Are you going to call him back? Alyssa wanted to say no, wanted to delete the messages and block the number and pretend Ryan didn't exist, just like he'd pretended she didn't exist for half a decade. But there was a small, traitorous part of her, the part that still remembered what it was like to have a big brother, to have family beyond just her and her failing mother, that wondered if maybe he'd changed. Maybe he'd grown up. Maybe he actually wanted to reconnect. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell, but he's still my brother." "He hasn't acted like your brother in 5 years." "I know." Alyssa set down her coffee and pulled her knees to her chest. "When my dad died, Ryan just shut down, couldn't handle it. He was always like that when things got hard. He ran. Our parents used to joke that Ryan inherited Dad's brains, but none of his backbone. And they were right. The second things got difficult, he disappeared. Did he know about your mom? About the Alzheimer's? I tried to tell him, called him maybe 20 times in the first few months after the diagnosis. Left voicemails, sent texts. He never responded. Eventually, I stopped trying." Alyssa felt tears prick her eyes. "I had to put her in the nursing home alone. Had to make all these terrible decisions about her care by myself. Had to watch her forget who I was without anyone to share that pain with. And now he calls because he saw me on TMZ? It's insulting." Adrian pulled her into his arms, and Alyssa let herself lean into him. "You don't owe him anything. Not a phone call, not an explanation, nothing. But what if he's actually changed? What if he wants to be part of Mom's life again? Part of my life? Then he needs to prove it. One phone call after 5 years of silence doesn't earn him anything." Alyssa knew Adrian was right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. She wanted to be angry. She was angry. But she was also hurt and confused, and, despite everything, a tiny bit hopeful that maybe her brother was finally ready to be her brother again. "Rebecca called while you were sleeping," Adrian said, changing the subject. "Good Morning America wants us. This Friday. National television, live interview, full segment." Alyssa's stomach dropped. "This Friday? That's 3 days away." "I know it's fast, but Rebecca thinks we should strike while the story's hot. Control the narrative before someone else does." "National television." Alyssa repeated the words, trying to make them feel real. "Millions of people watching us. We don't have to do it. We can find another way." "No." Alyssa pulled back to look at him. "No, we're doing this. I'm just processing. 3 days to prepare to tell our story to the entire country. We'll prepare together." Rebecca's sending over potential interview questions, suggested talking points. "We'll practice until you feel comfortable." Alyssa laughed weakly. "I don't think I'm ever going to feel comfortable talking about my life on national television." "Then we'll practice until you feel less terrified." That might be achievable. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. "Jennifer needs me to handle some stuff at the office. Board meeting prep, investor calls. Will you be okay here for a few hours? Or you can come with me if you want." "I should probably go home. Face my real life at some point." "You could stay here," Adrian offered carefully. "Move in, at least temporarily, until the media attention dies down." Alyssa shook her head. "I appreciate the offer, but I need to maintain some independence. Need to prove to myself and everyone else that I'm not here for your mansion or your money, that I have my own life. Even though maintaining your own life right now means dealing with reporters camped outside your apartment." "Are there actually reporters outside my apartment?" Adrian's expression was guilty. Jennifer checked this morning. There were 3. Great. Perfect. Wonderful. Alyssa flopped back on the bed. This is my life now. Reporters outside my home, strangers calling my phone, my estranged brother crawling out of the woodwork. What's next, my high school boyfriend selling stories about me? Do you have a high school boyfriend I should know about? His name was Tommy Brooks. He broke up with me junior year because I was too serious about school and not serious enough about having fun. I'm sure he's thrilled to tell anyone who'll listen about how boring I was at 17. Adrian laughed, and the sound eased some of the tension in Alyssa's chest. You're handling this better than I expected. I'm spiraling internally. This is just my external coping mechanism, sarcasm, and deflection. It's working for you. Alyssa sat up and looked at Adrian seriously. I need to see my mother today. Need to make sure she's okay, that the nursing home security is actually keeping reporters away from her. I'll come with you. Adrian, I want to meet her. Want to see the woman who raised someone as extraordinary as you. And besides, if we're doing this going public, telling our story, I should meet your mother. Even if she doesn't remember me 5 minutes later, Alyssa felt her throat tighten. She won't know who you are. She barely knows who I am most days. I know. But you'll know. And that matters. They took Adrian's car, a Tesla that was nice but not ostentatious, at Alyssa's insistence, and drove to Evergreen Care Facility. True to the nursing home's word, there were security personnel at the entrance who checked their IDs before allowing them in. Ms. Cole, the security guard said, recognition in his eyes. We've been keeping watch. No unauthorized persons have gotten past this desk. Thank you. Alyssa meant it with her whole heart. They walked through the halls, past residents in various states of awareness, past nurses who did double takes when they recognized Adrian, past the common room where a TV played the news, probably featuring stories about the two of them. Margaret Cole's room was at the end of the hall. Alyssa knocked softly before entering, even though her mother wouldn't understand the courtesy. Her mother sat in a chair by the window, staring out at the garden. She was tiny, had always been tiny, but the disease had shrunk her further. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore a soft pink cardigan that Alyssa had bought her last Christmas. Hi, Mom, Alyssa said gently, kneeling beside the chair. Margaret turned, and for a moment, just a brief, flickering moment, recognition sparked in her eyes. May, my little one. Alyssa's heart leapt. Yeah, Mom, it's me. You look tired. Are you eating enough? Your father always says you don't eat enough. The mention of her father, dead for 13 years, made Alyssa's chest ache. I'm eating, Mom, I promise. Margaret's gaze drifted past Alyssa to Adrian, who stood awkwardly by the door. Who's this? Is this Donald? Donald, you came. Donald was Alyssa's father's name. Alyssa felt tears prick her eyes. No, Mom, this is Adrian. He's my boyfriend. The word felt strange in her mouth, too small for what Adrian actually was to her. Boyfriend? Margaret smiled vaguely. That's nice. You should have a boyfriend. Pretty girl like you. Adrian stepped forward and crouched down beside Alyssa. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Cole. Alyssa's told me so much about you. Margaret studied his face with childlike curiosity. You're very handsome? Thank you, ma'am. Welcome. Margaret seemed happy. Then, almost immediately, she forgot what they'd been discussing. Her attention drifted back to the window. The birds are nice today. Do you see the birds? Alyssa followed her mother's gaze. There were no birds, just an empty garden and gray Seattle sky. Yeah, Mom, the birds are beautiful. They sat with Margaret for an hour. Sometimes she engaged with them, asking random questions or making observations that didn't quite connect to reality. Sometimes she just stared out the window, lost in whatever maze her mind had created. At one point, she looked at Alyssa and said, Have you seen my daughter? I'm supposed to meet her for lunch. Alyssa had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry. Adrian found her there, leaning against the sink, trying to pull herself together. "I'm sorry," Alyssa said, wiping at her eyes. "I should be used to this by now. It's been 3 years, but it still hurts every time she doesn't recognize me." "Of course it hurts. You're losing your mother in slow motion. You don't get used to that. I miss her. God, I miss her so much. I miss having a mom who knew my name, who gave advice, who made everything feel manageable. And now she's just gone, even though she's right there." Adrian pulled her into his arms and let her cry, let her fall apart in a nursing home bathroom, because sometimes that's all you can do. Hold someone while they grieve for a person who's still alive. When Alyssa finally pulled herself together, they returned to Margaret's room. She was dozing in her chair, her face peaceful in sleep. "She looks like you," Adrian said softly. Same facial structure, same determined set to her jaw, even in sleep. She was fierce when she was well. "Raised 2 kids on a waitress's salary while my dad worked construction. She was unstoppable." Alyssa adjusted her mother's blanket gently. "I keep hoping she'll have one of those miraculous moments you hear about, where the fog clears for a minute and she's herself again, just long enough to tell her I love her and have her actually understand. She knows you love her, even if she doesn't consciously remember. Some part of her knows. You think. I know." They left when the nurse came to help Margaret to lunch. On the way out, Alyssa stopped at the front desk to thank the staff again for the extra security. "Of course, Miss Cole," the head nurse said. Then, lowering her voice, "For what it's worth, I think what you two have is lovely. My daughter showed me some of the articles, and I told her that anyone who'd call you a gold digger doesn't understand what real love looks like." Alyssa felt tears threaten again. "Thank you. That means more than you know." In the car, Alyssa was quiet, processing the visit, processing everything. "Thank you for coming with me," she said finally. "Thank you for letting me meet her." "And Alyssa, what you're doing for your mother, making sure she's cared for, visiting regularly, loving her even when she doesn't remember you, that's extraordinary. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're not enough." "I'm trying. I know." They were almost back to Adrian's house when Alyssa's phone rang. Ryan again. She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the decline button. "Answer it," Adrian said quietly. "You'll regret it if you don't. At least hear what he has to say." Alyssa took a deep breath and answered. "Hello? Alyssa, finally. I've been trying to reach you all morning." Her brother's voice was exactly as she remembered, slightly nasally, tinged with the Seattle accent he'd tried to lose when he went to college. He sounded older, but still fundamentally Ryan. "I've been busy," Alyssa said coolly. "Right. I saw. You're all over the internet. Dating Adrian Pierce? Alyssa, what are you thinking?" The condescension in his voice made her see red. "Excuse me? Come on. A billionaire CEO? You don't think that looks suspicious? You don't think people are going to assume you're using him? People can assume whatever they want. What I'm thinking is, where the hell have you been for the last 5 years, Ryan?" Silence on the other end. Then, "I know I haven't been around." "Haven't been around? Haven't been around?" Alyssa's voice rose. "You disappeared, Ryan. Completely. Mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I tried to tell you, called you 20 times, and you couldn't be bothered to respond. I had to put her in a nursing home by myself. Had to make impossible decisions about her care alone. Had to work 3 jobs to pay for it while you did." "What exactly? Where have you been?" "I was dealing with my own stuff, Alyssa. Dad's death hit me hard. It hit me hard too, but I didn't get the luxury of running away and processing for 5 years. I had to stay and deal with reality. I'm sorry, okay? I know I messed up, but I'm here now. I want to make things right." "Now? You want to make things right now? After I've been featured in every gossip rag in the country? How convenient. That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" Alyssa was shaking with anger. "You abandoned your family when we needed you most. And now you call because you saw me on the news? Because suddenly I'm interesting enough to be worth your time? I'm worried about you. This man you're with, do you even know him? What if he's just using you for some kind of publicity stunt? Adrian has been more of a family to me in the last month than you've been in 5 years. So don't you dare question my choices. Alyssa. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to disappear and then show up acting like a concerned brother. You lost that right when you stopped answering my calls. Mom's my mother, too. I have a right to be involved in her care. The audacity of that statement nearly made Alyssa drop the phone. You have a right? You forfeited your rights when you vanished. I'm Mom's legal guardian. I make the decisions. And if you want any involvement in her life, you're going to have to earn it. I'm coming to Seattle. We need to talk about this face to face. You're not listening, I'll be there Friday. We'll talk then. He hung up before Alyssa could respond. She sat in the car, staring at her phone, vibrating with fury and hurt and a complicated tangle of emotions she didn't know how to process. I'm guessing that didn't go well, Adrian said carefully. He's coming to Seattle. Friday, the same day as our Good Morning America interview. Alyssa laughed bitterly. Perfect timing. My estranged brother shows up to lecture me about my life choices on the same day I bare my soul on national television. What could possibly go wrong? Adrian pulled the car over and turned to face her fully. You don't have to see him. He said he wants to be involved in Mom's care. He's still legally her son. I don't know if I can actually keep him away. Then we'll deal with it together. Him, the interview, all of it. You're not alone anymore, Alyssa. I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to not be alone. Then let me teach you. Alyssa looked at him, at this man who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago, who'd turned her life upside down in the best and worst ways possible, who'd gone from suicidal and broken to fighting for them with everything he had. How did we get here? She asked softly. How did we go from a rainy street and a $32 taxi fare to national television interviews and long-lost brothers and navigating this impossible relationship? I don't know. But I'm glad we did. Even with all the complications, I'd do it all over again. Even the part where you almost jumped off a bridge? Even that. Because it led me to you. Alyssa leaned across the console and kissed him, soft and sweet, and full of gratitude for this beautiful, complicated man who somehow made all the chaos feel manageable. Okay, she said, when they pulled apart. Okay, we've got 3 days to prepare for Good Morning America, and I guess we're also dealing with my brother and the ongoing media circus, and probably 12 other things I'm not thinking of right now. One thing at a time. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but it's worth it. You're worth it. As they drove back to Adrian's house to start preparing for the interview, Alyssa tried to hold on to that certainty, that despite everything, the media scrutiny, her brother's sudden reappearance, the impossible gap between their worlds, this relationship was worth fighting for. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered a warning. Sometimes, fighting for something isn't enough. Sometimes, the universe throws so many obstacles in your path that even the strongest love can't survive the impact. Alyssa just hoped they weren't about to find out if that voice was right. Friday morning arrived. With the weight of inevitability, Alyssa had barely slept. She'd spent the night at Adrian's house in his bed this time, wrapped in his arms, trying to quiet the anxiety screaming through her veins. They'd practiced the interview questions until she could recite the answers in her sleep. Rebecca had coached them on body language, tone, how to deflect inappropriate questions while still appearing open and honest. Remember, Rebecca had said during their final prep session the night before, you're not defending yourselves. You're sharing your story. There's a difference. Defense makes you look guilty. Sharing makes you look human. Now, at 5:30 a.m., sitting in the green room at the Good Morning America studios in New York, they'd flown out the night before, Alyssa felt anything but human. She felt like a bundle of raw nerves wrapped in a dress that cost more than her monthly rent. Adrian had insisted on hiring a stylist, and while Alyssa had to admit the deep blue dress was beautiful and flattering, it felt like a costume, like she was playing the role of billionaire's girlfriend, instead of just being herself. "You look beautiful," Adrian said, reading her thoughts. He looked infuriatingly calm in his tailored suit, though Alyssa could see the tension in his jaw, the way he kept flexing his hands. "I look like I'm trying too hard. You look like you. Just a slightly fancier version. That's what worries me. What if people think I'm pretending to be something I'm not? What if Alyssa?" Adrian took her hands, stilling her nervous fidgeting. "We tell our truth. That's all we can do. Some people will believe us. Some won't. We can't control that." 5 minutes, a production assistant called. Poking her head into the green room, Alyssa's stomach dropped to her feet. "I think I'm going to be sick." "You're not going to be sick. You're going to be amazing." Adrian squeezed her hands. "I love you. Remember that. Whatever happens out there, I love you." "I love you too." Alyssa took a shaky breath. "Okay, let's do this before I lose my nerve entirely." They were led onto the set, a cozy arrangement of armchairs and a small couch, all soft lighting and carefully orchestrated intimacy. The host, Sarah Chen, no relation. Though Alyssa had joked about it being a sign, greeted them warmly. "Thank you both for being here," Sarah said as they got mic'd up. "I know this hasn't been easy for either of you." "Thank you for giving us the chance to tell our side," Adrian replied. And then they were live. Alyssa watched herself on the monitor, a stranger in a blue dress sitting next to a man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers. She tried to remember Rebecca's coaching. Sit up straight, but not stiff. Make eye contact. Smile when appropriate. Let your emotions show. It makes you relatable. "Adrian Pierce and Alyssa Cole," Sarah began, her voice warm and professional. "Your relationship has captured national attention over the past 2 weeks. Photos of you two together went viral, sparking intense debate about wealth, class, and what some are calling a modern-day Cinderella story. Thank you for being here to share your side of things." "Thank you for having us," Adrian said smoothly. Sarah turned to Alyssa. "Alyssa, let's start with you. How did you two meet?" This was the easy part. They'd practiced this. Alyssa took a breath and began. "We met on a rainy night about 6 weeks ago. I was leaving my shift at the restaurant where I work, and I saw Adrian standing on a street corner in downtown Seattle. He looked lost and soaking wet. He didn't have his phone or wallet, and he needed help getting home. So I paid for his taxi fare. $32, Adrian added, looking at Alyssa with an expression that made her heart skip. She paid $32 she couldn't afford to help a complete stranger. Sarah leaned forward. "But you weren't just any stranger, were you, Adrian? You're a billionaire, CEO of Apex Dynamics. Why didn't you tell her who you were?" Adrian's expression turned serious. "Because in that moment, I wasn't a CEO or a billionaire. I was just a person who needed help. And Alyssa offered it without knowing anything about me, without expecting anything in return. That's who she is." "Let's talk about that night," Sarah said carefully. "Adrian, there have been reports unconfirmed that you were going through a particularly difficult time when you and Alyssa met. Can you speak to that?" Alyssa felt Adrian tense beside her. This was the moment they'd debated extensively with Rebecca. How much to reveal? How vulnerable to be? Adrian made the choice. "I was suicidal," he said simply. The words landed in the studio like stones in still water. "That night, I'd driven to a bridge with the intention of jumping. I'd recently gone through a divorce, I was struggling with depression, and I'd reached a point where I couldn't see any reason to keep going. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't make myself jump. So I drove away and just walked for miles until Alyssa found me." Sarah's professional composure cracked slightly, genuine emotion crossing her face. "That's incredibly brave of you to share." It's the truth. And if we're going to tell our story, it needs to include that truth. Because what Alyssa did that night, what she probably didn't even realize she was doing, was saving my life. She looked at a stranger standing in the rain and saw someone worth helping. Someone worth saving, Sarah turned to Alyssa. Did you know? That night, did you realize what Adrian was going through? Alyssa's voice was soft. Not entirely, but I could see he was in pain. And I couldn't just walk past someone in pain, even though you were struggling yourself. You were working multiple jobs to pay for your mother's memory care, correct? Yes, my mother has Alzheimer's, advanced stage. The care is expensive, and I was doing everything I could to keep up with the costs. Which brings us to something that's been the subject of much speculation, Sarah said, her tone delicate. Adrian, you recently paid for Alyssa's mother's care. A substantial amount. Some people have suggested this makes the relationship transactional. What do you say to that? I say those people don't understand what love looks like, Adrian responded firmly. Yes, I paid for Margaret's care, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Not because I'm trying to buy Alyssa's affection, but because I love her. And when you love someone, you want to help ease their burden. You want to use whatever resources you have to make their life better. But Alyssa, Sarah turned to her. You initially resisted his help, correct? Alyssa nodded. I did, because I'd spent 3 years being independent, taking care of everything myself. And Adrian's help, as generous as it was, felt like it was taking away my agency. Like I was becoming dependent on him. How did you work through that? We talked, really talked, about boundaries and respect, and what it means to accept help without losing yourself. And I realized that accepting help doesn't make me weak or dependent. It just makes me human. We all need help sometimes. The difference is, Adrian had the resources to provide it, and I had to decide whether my pride was more important than my mother's care. Obviously, you chose your mother. I chose to trust that Adrian's intentions were good, that he wasn't trying to control me or buy me, that he genuinely cared about me and wanted to help. Alyssa looked at Adrian, and he's proven that trust was well placed, Sarah smiled. Tell me about your first date. Take me through it. They did, talking about the Italian restaurant, the walk through Fremont, the kiss by the troll sculpture, and as they spoke, Alyssa felt some of her nervousness fade. This wasn't an interrogation. This was just them telling their story, showing people who they actually were. Now, I have to ask, Sarah said, because it's what everyone's wondering. Alyssa, what do you say to people who call you a gold digger? The question they'd been dreading. Alyssa had practiced her answer 100 times, but now, sitting under studio lights with millions watching, the words felt inadequate. I understand why people might think that, Alyssa said carefully. On paper, our relationship looks suspicious. Poor waitress, rich CEO. It's a fairy tale or a con job depending on your perspective. But fairy tales and con jobs are both fiction. Our relationship is real, messy and complicated and real. She took a breath, gathering courage. I'm not with Adrian because of his money. I'm with him because he makes me laugh when I want to cry. Because he listens when I talk about my mother without trying to fix everything. Because he's genuine and vulnerable and willing to admit when he's broken. The money is just noise. It complicates things, sure. It creates power imbalances we have to navigate. But it's not why I love him. And you do love him? I do, very much, Sarah turned to Adrian. Adrian, same question from the other side. What do you say to people who suggest you're having some kind of midlife crisis? That you're seeking validation from someone you see as beneath you? Adrian's expression hardened. First, Alyssa isn't beneath me. She's my equal in every way that matters. And second, this isn't a crisis. This is the opposite of a crisis. For years, I was sleepwalking through my life, building a company, achieving success, and feeling absolutely nothing. Alyssa woke me up, made me feel things again, made me want to participate in my own life instead of just observing it. He reached for Alyssa's hand. People who think I'm having a crisis don't understand that I was already in crisis. Alyssa didn't create problems in my life. She gave me reasons to solve them. The interview continued for another 10 minutes. Questions about their plans for the future. We're taking it one day at a time. About how they handle the public scrutiny. Together, with a good sense of humor. About advice for other couples navigating class differences. Communication, respect, and remembering why you chose each other in the first place. And then it was over. The cameras stopped rolling. Sarah thanked them warmly, telling them off-air that she thought they'd done beautifully, that people would see the genuine love between them. In the car back to the hotel, Alyssa felt emotionally wrung out. "How did we do?" "You were perfect," Adrian said immediately. "I almost cried when you talked about the bridge." "I know. I saw." Adrian pulled her close. "That's okay. It showed people this is real. That we're real." Alyssa's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Incredible job, both of you. The clip is already trending. Positive response so far. Well done." Then another text from Ryan. "Just watched your interview. We need to talk. I'm at the Sheraton in Seattle. Call me when you land," Alyssa groaned. "My brother watched." "What did he say?" "That we need to talk." "As if we haven't needed to talk for the last 5 years. Do you want to see him?" Alyssa was quiet for a long moment. "I think I have to. Not because I owe him anything, but because I need closure. Need to tell him to his face everything I couldn't say on the phone." "Then I'm coming with you. Adrian, non-negotiable. You've supported me through everything. Let me support you through this." They flew back to Seattle that afternoon. The interview aired while they were in the air, and by the time they landed, Alyssa's phone had exploded with notifications. Messages from Betty. "You were wonderful. Proud of you, honey," from Giuseppe. "You tell him, Alyssa." Beautiful interview from the nursing home. The staff all watched together. "We're rooting for you both, and hundreds more." From acquaintances, former co-workers, people Alyssa barely remembered. Most were supportive. Some were still skeptical, but the tone had shifted. The interview had humanized them, had shown people they weren't a scandal or a fairy tale, just two people trying to build something real. They met Ryan at a coffee shop near his hotel neutral territory. Alyssa insisted on that much control. Her brother looked exactly as she remembered, and also completely different. Same face, same eyes, but 5 years older. He'd put on weight, had lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He stood when they entered, looking nervous. "Alyssa, you look good." "Ryan?" Alyssa's voice was cool. "This is Adrian." The two men shook hands, sizing each other up. Ryan's expression was hard to read: surprise, maybe, or grudging approval. "The famous Adrian Pierce." "Just Adrian is fine." They sat. An awkward silence descended. "You wanted to talk," Alyssa said finally. "So talk." Ryan took a deep breath. "I saw your interview this morning, and I'm sorry, Alyssa, for all of it, for disappearing, for not being there when you needed me, for not being a brother to you. Why now? Why, after 5 years of silence, do you suddenly care? Because seeing you on TV, hearing you talk about handling Mom's illness alone, about working 3 jobs, it hit me. Really hit me. What a selfish coward I've been. And I know I can't undo 5 years of absence. But I want to try to make amends. If you'll let me." Alyssa felt tears threaten. "Do you know what it was like? Watching Mom forget everything while you were God knows where? Making impossible decisions about her care? Working myself to exhaustion and still falling short? I needed you, Ryan. I needed my big brother. And you were gone." "I know. And I'm so sorry." Ryan's voice cracked. "Dad's death broke something in me. I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle watching Mom deteriorate, too. So I ran. Moved to Portland, buried myself in work, pretended I didn't have a family falling apart back home. It was cowardly and selfish, and I regret it every single day. That's not good enough. Regret doesn't fix anything, I know. But I'm here now. I want to help. I want to be part of Mom's life again." part of your life. I know I have to earn that, but I'm willing to try." Adrian, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "What changed? Why now, specifically?" Ryan looked at him, then back at Alyssa. "Honestly, seeing Alyssa happy, seeing her on TV with you, talking about building a life, about being supported, it made me realize how much I've missed, how much I've let slip away, because I was too weak to face my own pain." "So, this is about you feeling guilty," Alyssa said flatly. "Partly, yes. But also—" Ryan pulled out his phone, showed them a photo. A woman and a small child. "This is Lily, my fiancée, and that's Emma, her daughter. I'm getting married in 3 months, and Emma asked if she'd have grandparents at the wedding. And I realized I've been lying to her, telling her my family was gone, when the truth is, I'm the one who left." Alyssa stared at the photo. "You're getting married. You have a family. And I want them to know you. Want Emma to know her aunt, her grandmother. Want to stop running from my past and start building a future that includes everyone I love. That's very convenient. Now that you're building your happy family, you remember you have a sister. That's not—" Ryan stopped, started again. "You're right to be angry. You're right to hate me. I deserve that. But Alyssa, please, give me a chance to prove I've changed. To be the brother I should have been all along." Alyssa looked at Adrian, searching his face for guidance. He squeezed her hand gently, but didn't speak. This was her choice to make. "I'm not ready to forgive you," Alyssa said finally. "Maybe someday, but not today, but—" She took a breath. "You can see Mom, under supervision. I'll arrange visits. And if you prove you're actually committed to being in her life, we can talk about rebuilding our relationship." Relief flooded Ryan's face. "Thank you. Alyssa, thank you. I won't let you down. You've already let me down multiple times, so forgive me if I don't take your word for it." Alyssa stood. "I'll email you the nursing home visiting hours. Don't show up unannounced. Don't overwhelm her. And Ryan, if you disappear again, if you hurt her or me, or fail to follow through on this promise, you're done. Permanently. Understood?" "Understood. Completely understood." They left the coffee shop, and Alyssa didn't look back. In the car, she finally let herself feel everything: the anger, the hurt, the tiny sliver of hope that maybe her brother actually had changed. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "I don't know. Ask me in 6 months, after we see if he actually follows through." "Fair enough." Alyssa's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and froze. It was a news alert. Breaking. Adrian Pierce's company. Apex Dynamics under investigation for financial irregularities. Adrian. Alyssa's voice was tight. "Look at this." Adrian pulled over and read the headline, his face going pale. "What the hell?" He opened the full article with shaking hands. Federal investigators have opened an inquiry into Apex Dynamics following anonymous tips regarding potential financial misconduct. Sources close to the investigation suggest irregularities in the company's accounting practices, including allegations of inflated revenue reports and questionable vendor payments. While no formal charges have been filed, the investigation raises serious questions about CEO Adrian Pierce's oversight of the company. Pierce, who recently made headlines for his relationship with Seattle waitress Alyssa Cole, could not be reached for comment. The timing of the investigation coming just hours after. Pierce's appearance on Good Morning America has some speculating about whether the interview itself triggered the scrutiny, or if this is merely coincidental. Alyssa felt cold dread wash over her. "Adrian, is this real? Could there actually be financial irregularities?" "No, absolutely not. Our books are clean. We have quarterly audits, external accounting reviews. This is—" He trailed off, his expression darkening. "This is someone coming after me." "After us? Who would do that?" "Could be competitors. Could be someone who wants to see me fail. Could be—" Adrian stopped, a horrible realization crossing his face. "The photos. The person who took those photos of us and started this whole media circus. What if it wasn't just about selling a story? What if it was the beginning of something bigger? You think someone's trying to destroy you? I think someone saw an opportunity when our relationship became public. A chance to make me vulnerable, distracted. And now they're striking while I'm exposed. Alyssa's phone rang. Jennifer, Adrian's assistant. Adrian put it on speaker. Adrian, we have a problem. The board is calling an emergency meeting. They want you back in Seattle immediately. The investors are panicking, and there's already been a sell-off of company stock. We've lost 15% of our market value in the last 3 hours. I'm on my way. Adrian ended the call and looked at Alyssa, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. I have to handle this. I know. But Alyssa, I need you to understand something. All of this chaos, the investigation, the media circus, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I can't promise it won't affect you too. So if you want to step back, if you want to protect yourself, stop. Alyssa cut him off. We just told the entire country that we face things together. You think I'm going to bail the second things get hard? This isn't just hard. This could be a disaster. My company could be destroyed. My reputation. Everything. Then we fight. Together. Like we promised. Alyssa took his face in her hands. You saved my life when you paid for my mother's care. You gave me breathing room when I was drowning. Now it's my turn to stand beside you while you fight for yours. Adrian pulled her into a fierce embrace. I love you. I love you too. Now let's go figure out who's trying to destroy us. As they drove toward Adrian's office, toward the emergency board meeting and the investigation and whatever nightmare was unfolding, Alyssa felt strangely calm. The past 6 weeks had taught her something important. She was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Strong enough to help a stranger. Strong enough to fall in love despite the odds. Strong enough to face whatever came next. Because love wasn't about easy. It wasn't about perfect. It was about choosing someone despite the complications, the obstacles, the absolute chaos that life threw at you. And Alyssa had made her choice. Now they just had to survive what came next. The investigation into Apex Dynamics lasted 4 months. 4 grueling months of legal battles, media scrutiny, and sleepless nights. But in the end, the truth came out. A disgruntled former board member had fabricated the allegations, hoping to tank the company's stock and buy it out at a reduced price. The FBI arrested him. Adrian's company was cleared completely, and the stock not only recovered its sword, but more importantly, Adrian and Alyssa survived it. Together. Now, on a sunny October afternoon, Alyssa stood in the garden of Evergreen Care Facility, watching her mother feed ducks by the pond. Margaret still didn't remember her most days, but she smiled more now, seemed more at peace. She looks happy, Ryan said, appearing at Alyssa's elbow. Her brother had been true to his word, visiting Margaret twice a week for the past year, slowly rebuilding the relationship he'd abandoned. They weren't where they used to be, Alyssa and Ryan, but they were getting there. She is happy, Alyssa agreed. The new medication regimen is helping. Paid for by your billionaire boyfriend? Ryan's tone was teasing now, affectionate rather than judgmental. Paid for by my fiancé, actually. Ryan's eyes went to her left hand, where a simple diamond ring caught the sunlight. Still can't believe you said yes to that public proposal. Very unlike you. Alyssa laughed. Adrian had proposed 3 months ago during a charity gala for Alzheimer's research, a cause they'd become passionate advocates for together. It had been elaborate and public and everything Alyssa normally would have hated. But it had also been perfect. I'm full of surprises these days. She'd gone back to school graphic design, just like she'd always wanted. Adrian had offered to pay, but Alyssa had insisted on student loans. They'd compromised. She took the loans. He paid them off as wedding gifts. It was still a work in progress, learning to accept help while maintaining her independence. But they were figuring it out. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Board meeting just ended. Coming to get you. Love you, Alyssa smiled. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations of Apex Dynamics, hiring a COO to handle the details while he focused on strategy and, more importantly, on actually living his life. He still worked hard, but he came home. He was present. He was healing. They both were. You're happy, Ryan observed. Really happy. I am, Alyssa said, surprised by how true it was. It's been a hell of a year, but yeah, I'm happy. Margaret looked up from the ducks and waved at them, her face bright. She didn't know who they were, but she knew they were friendly. That was enough. When Adrian's car pulled up, Alyssa kissed her mother's forehead, hugged her brother, and walked toward the man who'd turned her life upside down in the best possible way. The man who'd been a stranger on a rainy street and was now her future. He met her halfway, as he always did. As he always would. Ready to go home? He asked. Alyssa took his hand. Yeah, let's go home. And they did.